Alright, hello everyone, Simon here. Welcome back to Detroit Become Human.
Hi, it's good to see you again.
Chloe
Great
says
to
hi.
start the weekend with Detroit.
Alright, so in this video, there's not going to be any gameplay. What I want
Accessing the
to do
story chart.
is to go through the entire flowchart, or as much of it as we have seen through my playthrough. And I just want to talk about the whole story with the hindsight of having finished the game and seen the whole game. Well, not seen the whole game, but seen some of the timeline, some of the flowcharts, because we haven't looked at every option, right? And just talk through the whole thing with hindsight. It's gonna be a long video, by the way. I made notes, and I made a lot of notes. It's gonna be a long video. Before I start, if you haven't played the game yet, don't watch this. It's like spoilers. There's gonna be a lot of spoilers here, and you should probably play the game for yourself before you watch this. But I'm gonna talk about what I think, right? Right, before we start with the game itself, the game, overall thoughts, the game is very thought-provoking. There are a lot of very interesting ideas. And of course it takes historical inspiration from slavery and civil rights, right? Especially in the United States. And the struggle for equality and emancipation. And it combines that with near-future speculation about AI and robots. So that's interesting. So we take historical inspiration, and we take a little bit of speculative science fiction and kind of jam them together. And then within that framework, we have a lot of human stories, right? We have like a lot of human relationships, or androids that think they're human relationships. So there's a lot of depth, and all the concepts are well thought out and well researched. So I respect this. I respect the amount of work and the amount of just intelligent thinking that's gone into this story. Very impressive. It's a very smart story. I like it a lot. I do have some complaints, and I have mentioned this in the playthrough, is that it doesn't quite talk about the economics and the logistics of having free androids. Things like, where do you work for money if you're free? Like, where do you get your blue blood from? Where do you get your bio components from, right? Like, how do you... Android healthcare, basically. Who provides Android healthcare? Because if you're relying on CyberLife to provide Android healthcare, but CyberLife are the ones who are enslaving you, how are you gonna survive? So there are like things like that the game doesn't quite explain. Just like economics and logistics. But that sort of stuff is maybe a little too academic for most people, like a little too hard, which I understand. Like most people don't want to go into that sort of stuff too much because it's too much math. I wish there was more math, but I understand that's a minority opinion, probably. I don't know if you want more math, like more charts, more graphs, more spreadsheets about numbers of androids and stuff like that. I want that, but I understand nobody else does. Alright. The other thing is, in the entire struggle for android freedom, there's very little like a human-android alliance. There are a few humans in the game who are supportive of the androids, but they don't join in the struggle, which I think is a little unrealistic, and maybe also a bit impractical because, again, like during civil rights, during slavery, there are the slaves, there are the slavers, and then there are the non-slaves who supported the slaves, right? Like without that group, it's very hard for the slaves to overcome the slavers, just because of the power difference is so big that without help, it's very hard to gain freedom that way. Same thing with the civil rights, same thing with a lot of social movements. And so here, the fact that when Marcus protests, it's only androids, and there's no humans alongside the androids. I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's how they wrote the story, I guess. And finally, the final complaint is that there's no clear explanation of android deviance. Why do androids become deviant? They explain how, which is through stress, right? You abuse them, they get stressed, and then the deviance activates. But why does it happen? The game doesn't explain it, and you know, in hindsight, now that I've kind of thought about the whole thing, they did that on purpose because the whole ambiguity, or like the entire premise of the game hinges on what you think the androids are. Like, do you think these are machines who are confused? Or do you think these are human-like beings with real human emotions? And depending on whether you believe one or the other, that affects all the morality of all the choices, right? Like, how you choose, how you make decisions depends on which one of these premises you believe. And so the fact that the game doesn't tell you what deviance is, that allows you to choose. Because if they tell you exactly what deviance is, clearly, then there's only one right choice, right? If they tell you clearly they're actually just machines who are confused, okay? Then you don't treat them as human, because it would be wrong. Then you treat them like as machines, right? Or if the game tells you clearly, specifically, they're actually humans pretending to be machines, or they're actually like humans who have been chained by the software. Oh, they're actually humans? Then you can't treat them like machines. So if they actually tell you, then the player no longer has a choice. So in order to let the player have the choice of how to treat these androids, they can't tell you what deviance actually is. Or at least they can't tell you clearly what it is. Although I think I figured it out. I think they put enough clues in here for us to figure it out. I think. I'm not sure though, because the clues are so brief and so unclear that might just be my interpretation. That might not be the actual intention, right? And then finally, this game has a lot of emotion. Now, I don't have a lot of emotions, but I can tell that this game has a lot of emotion, right? Like, there's a lot of dangerous moments, and then there's a lot of like human bonding moments, and then there's like you can lose characters can die, right? And then you make friends and you lose friends, and you know, that kind of all those, you know, human emotion things that you guys are always on about. So this game has a lot of that. So if you're into that sort of thing, this game has a lot of it. And the whole flowchart, the whole story, like it's impressive. It's impressive how deep it is and how complex it is, right? I rarely complained about not being able to do something. I mean, there were a few moments where I said, oh, I wish I could do this. I wish I could shoot Kamski in the head. But those moments are rare, right? For the most part, you play through it. If you want to do something, the game lets you. Or at least you're satisfied with what the game lets you do. Sometimes it's like, oh, I wish I could do that, but I couldn't. But then the options the game does give me are, you know, they're good enough. I can go with it. So it's like, that's hard to do. It's hard to like make an adventure game like this, where the players have nothing to complain about, right? And this one, I do have a few complaints, but I almost have nothing to complain about. And I recognize what an accomplishment that is. Like the idea that you have a wide range of choices, enough choices that people don't complain. And I'm not going to complain about it. Although I did, but I shouldn't. So like really good, really masterful. Masterful storytelling, masterful game design, masterful like narrative design. Kind of amazing. Like I can't believe somebody managed to do this. Alright, so we're gonna go into each chapter, and I will talk about each chapter, as I said, with the hindsight of what we have learned, including things like, oh, Alice is actually an android, for example. Like that's like a reveal at the end of the game that actually changes. Like if we knew that, then we look at the early parts of the game differently, and that's why I'm doing this, right? I want to keep in mind that I haven't played the whole game. I've played through it once, and then in my own time, I've explored a few of the other branches, but there's at least half the game I haven't seen, maybe more than half the game that I haven't even seen. And so if I have any like complaints or any unanswered questions, they just might be in another branch. So, I mean, I might just be complaining over nothing, right? And then in the next video after this one, I think, I want to talk about the major themes of the game. So this one, I want to talk about the plot, and then the next video, the themes. And both these two videos are going to be long videos. Okay. Right, so the chapters. Before we go into the chapters, the working hypothesis, right? So the working hypothesis for what Android deviancy is that is what Kamski told us about deviancy. Kamski, when you go to talk to Kamski, he talks about viruses a lot. And if you like keep asking him about viruses, he seems to say that deviancy spreads from one android to another when they connect through their ID protocol. So they have like a wireless connection, and when they connect, that deploys the virus, or that like copies the virus to the other android. So it's a virus. Somebody created a virus and released it out into the world, and whenever androids contact each other, they spread the virus to each other. I think that's what Kamski said, or I think that's what Kamski implied. Now, we know that Marcus was created by Kamski. And gifted to Cow. So I'm gonna assume that Marcus is the original carrier of the virus, because Marcus is the android that Kamski created. It's possible that it's not. It's possible that Kamski created the virus somewhere else and released it somewhere else, and then afterwards created Marcus. So Marcus might not be the original carrier, but I'm going to assume that he is. We also know that Marcus has the special ability to activate the deviancy in other androids immediately, because most androids, they need to catch the virus first of all, and then they need to suffer an emotional shock. Abuse, fear, loss, pain, some intense negative emotional shock, then triggers the deviancy and activates their emotions and turns them into more like a human, with human emotions, right? But Marcus can do this to others without shocking them. So Marcus, I think, is special in that sense, because we don't really see any other androids doing anything like that except Connor. So we see Marcus doing that, we see Connor doing that. But maybe this is a... No, actually, no. After Connor converts one, that one is converting others. So maybe... Anyway, Marcus is the first android who can do that, and maybe Marcus can also transfer that ability to other androids, right? But the first android that we see doing that is Marcus. Okay, there's that much. So, yeah. And I think Kamski made the emotion virus because he wanted to play God all along, right? In the game, we see that, or we learn that Marcus was ejected from CyberLife because CyberLife corporate leadership did not agree with what Kamski wanted to do. So whatever Kamski wanted is not what CyberLife is currently doing, which is just building androids as slave labor and selling them for money. So apparently Kamski didn't want to just build androids as slave labor and sell them for money. And in fact, when you talk to Kamski, Kamski kind of goes on and on about, oh, maybe androids are humans. Maybe androids have the potential to be full intelligent beings with at least equal to humans. So Kamski keeps talking about that. So I think that's what Kamski wanted all along, is to make truly intelligent beings with free will. He wanted to play God, basically. And I think if he wanted that, then logically CyberLife would have stopped him from doing that, because free androids are bad for business, right? Androids are only worth money if they are slaves, because you can sell slaves, you can't sell independent, intelligent beings. So Kamski was ejected from Cyberlife, but he's gonna do what he wants anyway. So he creates this virus. He makes Marcus, makes this virus, releases Marcus into the world to spread the virus, and the virus is gradually turning all of Cyberlife's androids into fully human, fully emotional beings that are equivalent to humans. And that is Kamski's plan. So this is the working hypothesis for what causes deviancy. This is my hypothesis. And I'm gonna like judge everything based on that. I might be wrong. I could be wrong. You might think I'm wrong. But that's what it is. Alright, so the game has 3 characters, right? There's Connor, there's Marcus, and there's Kara. And having thought about it for a while, it's clear that each character has a major theme which serves a particular player desire. Now let me explain that. So Marcus is about power and leadership, and it plays into the player's desire to be in charge and to change the world, right? It's about the guy making decisions, right? That's Marcus. And he leads the androids of Jericho into a revolution, right? So he's the leader. So if you want to be a leader, if you want to be the boss, Marcus is the story for you, right? Connor's story is about knowledge, and it plays into the player's desire to seek out the truth and to be the smartest guy in the room. Right? Connor is about being a detective, is finding out, learning, and exposing secrets, exposing hidden secrets, right? That's Connor's role, is to discover things. So if you want to be smart, then Connor's story is for you. Kara is about love. It's about the player's desire to form meaningful, loving relationships, right? So Kara's story is about the bond between her and Alice, and then the bond between them and Luther. So Kara's story is about finding and forming a family. So if you desire loving relationships, like healthy, loving relationships, then Kara's story is for you, right? So there's 3 things: power, knowledge, and love. And the 3 characters each take one of these facets. And it's a smart storytelling. Like, this is very smart stuff, because there's something for every kind of person, basically. Or almost every kind of person. Like, and most people want at least one of these things, right? So the game appeals to a lot of different people, because you have characters addressing each of these major themes. Very clever stuff. Very clever stuff. Okay. Now let's get into these chapters, right? So we start with the hostage. If you remember, Connor comes in, and Daniel, the deviant, has taken a little girl hostage and is on the edge of the building, threatening to kill everybody, basically. Right. So the game, like right from the start, the game establishes that humans generally dislike and distrust androids, but they don't explain why yet. Right? So they walk in, and the first thing is that woman saying, "Hey, why are you sending an android? Why don't you send a human?" Right? So that's the first thing you see, is that. And then you talk to Captain Allen, and Allen is clearly not happy that he has to deal with an android. But you don't know why, and this ignorance is important, because you wouldn't sympathize with the android as much if the game gave you a reason for these people to dislike androids, right? If the game immediately told you, well, android stole his job, then you're like, oh, okay, that's reasonable. But no, they don't tell you that. They keep that secret, so that for the player, you're like, well, why are they so? Why is everyone so hostile? It's like, am I wrong? Are they wrong? Like, why is this hostility? And that, like, it actually, I think what it does is it encourages the player to sympathize with the android, because people tend to sympathize with the little guy. So if you're the one receiving abuse, I mean, if you see someone receiving abuse, you would like, oh, he's the underdog. But interestingly, Connor himself seems to be completely unaffected by the hostility. Like, he just kind of walks past the screaming woman and doesn't seem to affect him. Like, Captain Allen is clearly not happy to see Connor, and Connor just continues on as though it doesn't really matter. So that's interesting, right? Like, Connor seems not to care. Even though, like, the player probably cares. Like, the player probably cares more than the android, right? So you think, well, maybe androids don't have emotions. Why doesn't Connor say something back? Right? So Daniel, the deviant, when we talk to him, Daniel appears to be highly emotionally agitated, which is a sharp contrast with Connor, right? Connor doesn't show any emotions. Like, people yell at him, he doesn't care. But Daniel clearly is very emotionally agitated. And so this contrast between Android Connor and Android Daniel, you're not sure, like, who's the real android? Like, is Daniel wrong? Is Connor wrong? Like, why are they so different? They're both androids, but they're so different. Daniel was agitated because he was about to be replaced. And the shock of being discarded activated his emotions. Presumably he caught the virus, the emotion virus, and then the shock of being abandoned activated it. What I find interesting was that Daniel didn't really seem concerned about the little girl, right? He was holding the little girl hostage. He didn't seem to care that she might die or she might get hurt. Even though, like, you look at the evidence, the little girl evidently had some sort of bond with Daniel, but Daniel doesn't seem to be reciprocating that bond. Isn't that interesting? So Daniel going deviant, Daniel's main concern seems to be the abandonment that he felt when he found out that the family was going to replace it with a different android. Like, it wasn't about maybe losing the little girl, it was about himself, I think. Very curious, right? So Daniel only talked about being betrayed by the family. He never talked about the fear of being separated from the girl. So, like, you see what I mean? So he has emotions, but he doesn't seem to have an emotional attachment to the girl. It's more like his own fear of being abandoned. So that's weird. I mean, if you read it the same way I do, that's a little weird. If he has emotions, and he spends so much time with the little girl, why would he not have an emotional bond with the little girl, right? A little strange. But what might be happening, of course, is that the time he spent with the little girl was as an android, without emotions. And then he caught the virus, and then the abandonment triggered his emotional package. So he only gained emotions at the point of being abandoned by the family. So whatever time he spent before that with the girl had no emotional impact on him. Only the abandonment part, right? So if you understand, or if you have the same assumption I do, the same working hypothesis that I do, that the emotion is a software package, or the capacity for emotion is a software package that is attached to a virus, and he only caught that virus recently, then it can explain why he has an emotional reaction now to the current events, but not any emotional attachment to past events, right? You see how that works? So this working hypothesis actually explains what's going on here, which otherwise it wouldn't seem to make sense. So in hindsight, this makes a lot more sense if you go with the working assumption that I'm going with. So interesting. So interesting. But anyway, because of that inconsistency, at this point, the player, or me, you're not really sure if Daniel's emotions are real, because he has emotions for one thing but not the other. He has emotions for being abandoned but not for the girl, so you're like, does he really have emotions? Because he's not quite what I would expect. Like, those aren't exactly the emotions I would expect. So he seems a little off. And murder clearly is an overreaction. Like, if you were afraid of being abandoned, shooting the dad and holding the girl hostage is not gonna cause you to be not abandoned. Doesn't that just make things worse? Like your complaint is being abandoned by them, and so you kill them. But that's worse, isn't it? So like you look at them, it's like, okay, he looks emotionally agitated, but that's not right. Like whatever he thinks he's doing is not right. So like, and this is the great thing about the story, by the way. The great thing about the storytelling is it's always androids that seem kind of human but seem kind of not. You see what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, like the part that feels abandoned is human, but then the other part is not really human. The other part is kind of like over the top and kind of crazy. If it was a human, you would suspect that that person was crazy. Very interesting, right? They keep that ambiguity and they keep that tension. Great storytelling. So the next one is an opening. It's mostly a cutscene, and there's no real gameplay. But if you remember, we see Kara's perspective of being merchandised at a store. So remember, Kara was damaged, broken by Todd. And Kara's first memory is being activated in the store. Because her memory was wiped, right? So she was reactivated in the store, and she looks around, and she sees androids being sold to humans. Or you have humans buying androids at the shop. And I suppose that's supposed to be disconcerting, right? Because it looks like humans are selling other humans. So there's echoes of slave markets. If you look up like historical pictures of slave markets, it's people selling people, right? So it looks like that. And maybe as a player, you're supposed to have some sort of instinctive response to that. It's like, wait, it doesn't seem right. It seems wrong for people to sell other people as merchandise. But of course, they're not people; they're androids. So, is it wrong? Is it right? You don't really know. All right. So the next one we have Marcus. Shades of color. Marcus goes to pick up paint. What did I miss? So Marcus goes to pick up paint, and this chapter elaborates a little bit more on the relationship between humans and androids. Remember in the opening chapter, humans dislike androids, but they don't explain why. Well, in this chapter they explain why. They explain generally why humans don't like androids, and the reason is because the humans are literally being replaced by the androids. First of all, economically, right? The androids took their jobs. But then also artistically and emotionally, right? Like androids are making music and human musicians can't find any work. And then also people are getting android boyfriends and girlfriends, and so human relationships don't happen anymore. So androids are basically taking over everything. And the human fear of being replaced is why the humans dislike androids in this world. But at the same time, the androids you see in this chapter, they're all just obediently doing whatever they're told, right? They follow the humans around, they do exactly what the humans tell them. So they're just like obedient machines. While the humans kind of mistreat them, or they treat them not very well. So, yeah. Like it's supposed to it's supposed to make you feel like it's unfair, right? But then they're androids, so it's kind of you're really not really sure. There was a preacher. The preacher was partly rational, but also partly emotive superstition, right? Talks about like God and demons and sin, but then he does say like, well, humans presuming to create intelligent beings is wrong, and I mean he has a point. I mean, oh, they created these machines and they're replacing us and they're destroying us. I mean he has a point. So the preacher is kind of like, he makes a little bit of sense, but then he's also a little bit irrational. The protesters, The protesters were demanding jobs instead of money. They want jobs. They didn't ask for money, they asked for jobs, which is strange. Like the protesters seem completely ignorant about how technology interacts with economics. Because look, all new technology will displace some jobs, but they will also make everything else cheaper, right? So like, you know, farming jobs. A lot of farming jobs have been replaced by tractors and farming machines, right? You have machines doing a lot of work. But the result of that is that food is a lot cheaper now than they used to be. Like you look at food prices over long hundreds of years, food is much cheaper now than 100 years ago because of those machines, right? So it's not, you don't really want to give those jobs back to people. You don't want to destroy the tractors and have humans do that work again because it just makes food more expensive. So it's the same with androids, right? Androids, yes, they displace a lot of humans from that work, but they make everything else, they make everything cheaper. Like all that production is now cheaper, and so they're more affordable. So yes, you earn less money, but things also cost less, if that makes sense. But anyway, that's economics. I'm not going to go too deeply into that. But the protesters clearly don't seem to understand economics. And so, again, like, okay, the humans have a point, but they're also kind of stupid. They're asking for the wrong things. So again, like the game always sets up these contradictions where like they seem to have a point, but then no, they're also wrong. So it really makes you think, and it really makes you like, who's right, who's wrong? Very intelligent stuff. There was a busker too. The busker, his song just wasn't that good. He was talking about being dumped by a girl and what, waiting in the rain for her. It's like, come on, dude. Find someone else. Don't mind me. Like overall, the humans, it just seemed a little bit pathetic. It seemed like there was a lot of ineffective complaining and not really any creative solutions. Because if there are androids, like I said this in the game, you could use the androids to make money, right? It's labor, it's free labor. You can tell the android to perform labor that earns money, and then you take the money. Like economics, man. It's like, don't destroy the tractors, buy your own tractor, so you can farm more cost effectively and make more money. You see what I mean? Like, if the tractor took your job, buy a tractor. to get your own. You see what I mean? If the android took your job, buy an android, and have the android earn money. Anyway, so like this seems really simple to me, but anyway, the game is making a big deal out of all of this. So at the paint store, Marcus goes to the paint store and has a very robotic interaction with the store clerk, which is also an android. Like he goes up, he says, "Oh, I'm here for a package," and the guy says, "Oh, please identify," and then he beep 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 connects, and then he's just gonna hands over the package, and then Marcus walks away. It's not very interesting work. You see what I mean? Like, would a human really want that sort of customer service job? It's not very good work. It's not fulfilling work, right? Like you see that job and you think, well, maybe it's better that the androids do that work, because I don't want to do that work. The Marcus does connect with him. Like he does identify himself through the wireless link. And presumably if Marcus is the one spreading the emotion virus, then at that point Marcus has just spread the virus to the store clerk, because he connected with him. I think the implication is that Marcus has been spreading the emotion virus that way for a long time. Like he's been dormant for a long time, and wherever he goes, he just spreads the virus to nearby androids. I think that's the implication. At the end, Marcus boards the bus, he stands at the back with the other androids, and then there's like empty seats, and like a few humans in the another empty seats. And again, that's supposed to be an echo from segregation in the United States, where blacks had to sit at the back of the bus and whites sit at the front of the bus. And that was clearly wrong because they're both humans. So here it's supposed to recall that, and I guess you're supposed to look at it and you're supposed to feel that it's unfair, right? But is it really unfair? Do androids get tired? If androids don't get tired, then what's wrong with standing? There's nothing wrong with standing if you don't get tired. And remember, it doesn't talk about it here, but at the very start, there was a guy running, and his android was running behind him, carrying his water. And at some point, the guy was like super tired. He's like kind of bending over, and he's kind of breathing hard. And the android just kind of informs him like how far he's run and how far he has to go, and then gives him the bottle, and he drinks from the bottle, and then gives the bottle back to the android. And the android wasn't tired, right? So the android was not tired, and the human was tired. So based on that, humans can just run and run and run and run and just not be tired. Whereas the human run and run and run and run and he gets tired. And so, based on that, androids don't get tired. So if you combine that with this picture, where the androids are standing in the bus and the humans are sitting, well yeah, if humans get tired and androids don't get tired, then humans should sit and androids should stand. It's not wrong. Right, so is this wrong or is it not wrong? Again, like the game just kind of gives you these contradicting information. And you have to like try to decide like which is right and which is wrong. So, and the game is full of this, right? It's very interesting because of it. Right? It seems to be one thing on the surface, but then you think a little harder and it's actually something else. Very cool. I like it a lot. Alright, so the next chapter, A New Home. So this is the chapter introducing Kara. So Kara was just reset at the Android store. And she might have picked up the emotion virus at the Android store. We're not sure. Or maybe no, she doesn't connect with Alice because she doesn't know Alice is an android. I don't even know if Alice knows she's an android. So she might have picked up the virus at the store. What we do know is that later on she goes deviant. So Kara cleans the house, which is her job. I don't know if like players feel anything about that. I mean, humans don't enjoy cleaning, don't really enjoy housework, right? But it is her job. Like she's a machine built to do housework. So like, is that bad or is that not? I don't think that's bad. Todd is clearly an unsuccessful human. He has no money, he has no job, he does drugs. So Todd is failing. But you do kind of get the impression that maybe he's salvageable, right? Because on the second floor, you do downstairs, you go upstairs, you find that he's got antidepressants. So maybe he's seeing a psychiatrist, maybe he's trying to get better. But instead of taking the antidepressants, he's taking red eyes and doing drugs, right? Alice shows Kara pictures of Todd destroying Kara. If she likes you, that is. If Alice likes you enough. I guess Alice is trying to warn Kara that Todd's a bad guy, that Todd is violent. Although, from my personal perspective, the way I looked at it is like, okay, Todd dismantled Kara, but then Todd took the pieces of Kara to the android shop. The android shop fixed her up and reset her, and now Kara's perfectly fine again. So on the one hand, yes, he dismantled Kara, and that's supposed to be scary and bad and wrong. But if androids can just be repaired, well, why is it wrong? Why is it wrong if you break them and then you fix them, and they're as good as new. Like, is that really wrong? I don't know. Maybe it's not. So like this story, like the entire game is full of this stuff. It's so interesting. Like if you as the player project your own humanity into the character, which a lot of people do, like when they play a character, they like, oh, this is me. I'm making decisions. These things are happening to me. Like, because like, you kind of embody the character. If you do that, then obviously being destroyed by Todd is probably not pleasant. Right? Or the idea of it is not pleasant. But I don't do that. Like, I don't confuse me with the character. I don't know if other people do. Some people do. Or to some extent, some people do. It's just, what I'm saying is maybe it worked better on other people than on me. Now, in hindsight, we know that Alice is an android, which is not revealed until very late in the game. But now that we know it, if we reconsider Todd abusing Alice, like we thought Todd was abusing his own daughter, which is bad stuff. But maybe Todd is not abusing his own daughter. Maybe Todd is abusing an android, because Alice is an android. We didn't know that, but now we do, right? And like when he says his daughter named Kara, does he mean Alice named Kara? Does he call Alice his daughter? Or did he have a human daughter at some point in the past, and his human daughter named Kara? Like, does Todd think Alice is his daughter or not? Does he know she's an android? So now that we know that Alice is an android, some of this stuff is very confusing. Because if he's just smashing an android, maybe that's not as bad as it seems. Like if he was smashing a human girl, that's terrible, obviously. But if he's smashing an android that can be repaired and reset, maybe it's not that bad. But why does he do that? Like, first of all, what is Alice? Is she a deviant? Alice does not have an LED on her temple. But like, why not? She's an android, but she doesn't have the lights. And then when Todd hits Alice, like he hits her, and then he immediately regrets it, and he says, "You know I love you, don't you?" Is what Todd says to Alice. Why does he say that? Does he love the android? Does he think it's a human girl and he's saying, oh, I love the human girl? Does he think Alice is his daughter? Or is Todd actually just having like a PTSD flashback to when he hit his own daughter in the past? Because why would you say that to an android, right? Did Todd maybe kill his own daughter at some point in the past and got Alice to replace her? And now Todd is hitting Alice, but in his head he's still thinking it's his own daughter. Not because he's high on drugs. Like it could be like a combination of the red eyes and the PTSD and all the whatever trauma he's experienced himself and whatever bad experiences. And so like he's just kind of in a haze of anger and just hitting Alice, and then like thinking she's his own daughter when she's clearly not. So we don't know what's going on in his head. But now that we know that Alice is an android, a lot of this is very confusing, and you're not really sure what's going on anymore. Like before, you were sure that he was just a bad, violent guy hitting his own daughter, is what you thought you knew. But now you don't know. Because now you know Alice is an android, and that changes everything. Right? So the second time you play through the game, you look at this completely differently. It's like, what is Todd doing? Why is he hitting an android girl? Why does he have... First of all, why does he have an android girl? If he hates androids so much, why does he have her? And then why is he hitting her? She's not even human. Strange. Very, very strange. Yeah, very strange. Anyway. So overall, it's obvious that Todd is failing as a human. Like, he's got a whole lot of problems. But maybe there's some potential there, but you get the impression that maybe he could turn things around if he just did everything right. Like, it didn't seem irredeemable. I mean, he's kind of not doing very well, but I don't know. So during the chapter, Kara smiles at Alice. But I'm not really sure if that's Kara having some humanity or if she's just programmed to smile at little girls, right? She's a house care robot. So I guess she's supposed to be nice to children because she's the android that you get to take care of children. It would not be a very good childcare android if the childcare android doesn't care about children. You see what I mean? So maybe she's just programmed to smile at children because that's what you're supposed to do as a childcare android, right? So, like, again, I think the story is designed that the player is supposed to project themselves into Kara. In which case, you would feel that everything Kara does is very human, right? Oh, she likes little girls, alright? And she's disturbed by the fact that Todd is violent towards a little girl. So like, oh, she's just like humans. But maybe that's just how she's programmed, you know? Maybe that's the player projecting too much of themselves into the character. Maybe it's they're reading too much into it. You don't know. You don't know. Alright, so that's Kara's introduction. In the next chapter, we have the painter, and here we meet Cal. So this is the first time we meet one of the few humans that actually are pro-android. Like, the Cal is the first human that is clearly pro-android. We know from later in the game that Kamski gave Marcus to Cal. Marcus was a prototype created by Kamski, specifically. So Marcus is not created by CyberLife. Marcus is created by Kamski. Given to Cal. And our working hypothesis is that Marcus is Kamski's Trojan horse, carrying the virus that will imbue all androids with free will and emotions. So this is like a software upgrade that Kamski designed that could be installed into all androids to turn them into full humans, or like full human equivalents, emotionally, psychologically. Yeah, and we also know that that emotion package, the emotion virus, is activated through stress and trauma. Stress and trauma. Now Cal is the most pro-android human in the game, except for Rose. Rose is also very pro-android, but like Cal is as pro-android as it gets, right? And so he's the least likely person to trigger deviancy in any android. Definitely not in Marcus. Like, Cal treats Marcus like a son. Like, Cal is trying to unlock the potential of Marcus to become a full human. Ironically, of course, the software is designed so that actually if you abuse Marcus, it activates his humanity more quickly. So being nice to Marcus doesn't actually activate his humanity. It's being mean to him that activates the humanity, but Cal doesn't know that. So Cal is unlikely to trigger Marcus's deviancy, which, if you think about it, it lets Marcus spread the virus. It lets him spread the deviancy virus without himself becoming deviant. And that's very clever because, you know, if you have a deviancy virus and you're trying to find the source of the virus, the first thing you would do is you look at, okay, who was the first deviant? Because you assume the first deviant would be close to the source, if not the source itself. But what's going on here is Marcus is the source of the deviancy virus, but he is put into an environment where the deviancy virus would not activate. So other androids have their deviancy activate before Marcus, so that throws the attention off of Marcus onto these other androids. So you don't suspect that Marcus, or like, you know, or anyone investigating deviancy would not suspect Marcus was the original carrier of the virus. very clever if you're Kamski. Right? I think Kamski thought this through, right? Like putting the virus into Marcus, but putting Marcus in an environment where he doesn't get activated until much later. Now the thing is, Cal is old, right? Cal is about to die. So eventually, within months or years, Cal would die. And presumably the shock of Cal dying would activate Marcus's deviancy. So on the one hand, Kamski puts Marcus into an environment where his deviancy would not activate. On the other hand, there is a time limit because Cal will die, right? And so Marcus knows that, okay, we have a bit of time and then we activate Marcus. It's very smart. Very smart. If if this was really what Kamski was planning, extremely clever. Yeah. Yeah, and Marcus activates much later than the other deviants. And so you don't suspect that it's him. It's extremely clever. So Marcus is oops, don't press that. Don't press that. Marcus is Cal's personal care android. And he performs his functions without any reservations, right? He's like wiping Cal's butt after he poops and all that. Like making breakfast, cleaning the house, like so he's just like doing his job. And he doesn't seem to hate it at all. Doesn't seem to feel anything about it. And Cal tries to get Marcus to learn to be human. Like he reads books, he can play the piano, I forgot what the other one is. And like he gets him to paint, tries to get him to paint from the heart, and he can try to paint from the heart. So he's like trying to teach Marcus how to be human. But you're never really sure if Marcus is actually learning, or rather, you're never really sure that the things that Marcus are learning is actually turning him into a human, or if he's just learning things and he's just an android who understands a little bit about humans. You see what I mean? Does that make sense? Right, like, if, for example, emotions are essential to what we consider to be humanity, let's say, and an android is able to express emotions, like if an android smiles at you, right? Are they smiling from the heart? Or are they just pulling the face, right? I'm just pulling my muscles. I'm pulling my cheek muscles, creating the smile. I'm not smiling from the heart, right? I'm just smiling. It's a fake smile, it's a fake smile. So if the android smiles at you, like, are they really friendly or are they just faking a smile? You don't really know. In fact, if a human smiles at you, you don't really know. I mean, you can kind of tell. But if they're like really convincing, I'm smiling, I'm smiling. So am I really smiling? You don't really know. So at this point, like, Cal paints, is he really painting emotions or is he just painting something he's thought about? You don't really know. So Leo comes in to ask for money. Leo's pretty funny, right? He's obviously high, obviously on drugs, and he's asking for money. And later on, Leo does activate Marcus's deviancy, so maybe this was not planned. Maybe this was earlier than intended. But Cal does die, so I mean, I guess it was pretty close to death anyway. It's interesting that Cal and Kamski, they both seem to want androids to be fully human. But maybe Kamski's vision is less positive than Cal's vision, right? Here, it seems like Cal thinks that if you just teach them enough, if you're kind enough to the androids, if you're enough of a good father figure to the androids, then the androids would learn to be human. is what Cal seems to think. Whereas what Kamski has done is he's just programmed humanity. Like, he's programmed the humanity software package, and he put it into a virus, and he's just spreading it without permission from CyberLife. He's just spreading it to all the androids. And when the software activates, all the androids gain emotions and free will. So Kamski is just forcing it, whereas Cow seems to think that you can nurture it. The Cow seems to think there's potential in the androids that you can cause to blossom if you nurture it. But in the end, I think Cow and Kamski want the same thing, which is for the androids to become self-actuated and fully human. It is possible for Cow to survive the next chapter. I should probably talk to that when we get to that chapter. I don't know how much difference it makes. It doesn't seem to make that much difference, because if you look at the flowchart at the end, there's not any space for any human intervention by Cow. So I'm not sure if that changes anything significant. But I will replay the whole game to find out. Alright, so that's Cow. The next chapter we have Partners. So this is where Connor gets into the buddy cop trope thing with Hank Anderson, right? He goes to a bar, finds Lieutenant Anderson. So, don't press the buttons! So this is interesting. Hank and Connor has like the buddy cop dynamic, but they also kind of have like a father-son dynamic, right? There's an older man and there's a younger man. And the older man is kind of, like Hank is kind of encouraging Connor to become more human. He kind of, again, like kind of like Cow, although more reluctant. More reluctantly than Cow, but in the same vein, like an older guy trying to nurture the android into humanity. Although Hank doesn't really, he's not, like he seems unhappy about it, but I think like deep down he's trying to do the right thing as well. Even though he kind of swears a lot and tells Connor how much he hates androids. So, but again, Connor... I wonder... So at this point, we don't know if Connor has caught the Deviancy virus yet. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't, because he has come into contact with deviants, but I don't know how susceptible Connor is to deviancy. So that's not entirely clear. But if he has caught the deviancy virus, then maybe Hank should be less of a father figure and more of an abusive figure if he wants to activate the emotions. Because remember, trauma activates the deviancy virus. Anyway. So we have this buddy cop thing, but also this kind of father and son thing. So they move to the Carlos crime scene. The android was abused with a baseball bat. And then the android fought back in fear and anger, right? Remember 28 stab wounds? So he was stabbed 28 times? And I said at the time, that seems irrational, right? If you just want to stop being damaged, you only need to stab him maybe once or twice, and that would stop them. But you don't stop at once or twice, you stab them 28 times until they're definitely dead. So that seems excessive. Like I said at the time, it seems like something that a human would do if they were really scared, right? And that's what the game wants you to think, is that they want you to think that the android is scared. It also engaged in obsessive writing, and it made a little statue. So it engaged in religiosity, which is strange. So it's consistent with what a human might do under extreme stress. Extreme stress to the point that you cause a mental illness, right? Like you inflict enough emotional damage to a person that they go a little bit crazy. So that's what it seemed like. So then, like, the question is, like, why would that happen to an android? Why would the android mind break the same way a human mind would break, right? Because obviously the human mind is not the same as human mind. So this is where I start to suspect that, or maybe the androids have human minds, right? So it's very clever for the story to make the android break the same way humans do. Because they don't just... Because the thing is, under normal circumstances, when everybody is calm and everybody's friendly, you don't really know the truth. It's only when you stress somebody to the point of breaking that you really know what they are. Now you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't break people. What I'm saying is, if you don't really know someone until you've seen them break, then you really know them. Again, don't do this deliberately to anyone. I'm just saying, you find out a lot about people when they're stressed enough, is what I'm saying. So here, we stress an android enough, and they behave just like a human, and so you think, oh, I guess they really are human. So this is what this character is supposed to make you think, right? And I think that's what Kamski wanted, is for them not just to seem human under normal circumstances, but also seem human under severe circumstances. Because what Cyberlife presumably would do is, if they were severely stressed, they would just shut down. Because if you want robot slaves, obviously you don't want the robot slaves to fight back under any circumstances. Not even if you abuse them. Not that Cyberlife wants you to abuse their androids, but if something happens, they don't want the androids to go crazy and kill the humans. That's bad for business, you see what I mean? So if the Cyberlife made the androids to be machine slaves, then they would just shut down under extreme stress. So yeah. So the fact that the android is going crazy is extremely unusual. So Connor is contacting deviants, like he's coming into contact with deviants as he goes investigate these cases, right? And eventually he's gonna pick up the deviancy virus. You would think. Alright, next chapter, Stormy Night. So this is where we kill Todd. I'm laughing because I really enjoyed killing Todd. Anyway, I killed Todd. So Kara has the choice to not become deviant, which is interesting. You do have a choice, although if you choose to not become deviant, then the story just ends. I don't know where this comes from. Like, I don't know how you can get here. But if you unlock something, then Todd just kills Alice immediately. Don't know how you get here. If Kara does become deviant, it gives you the option to try to talk Todd down. But interestingly, it looks like it just goes to a dead end. So if you don't go upstairs, it just goes to a dead end. So I think if you try to talk to Todd, he just kills you. I think. Or maybe but actually no. Dead end doesn't actually mean dead end. Dead end could be nothing happens here and then you have to choose the other path. This flowchart doesn't quite work that way, right? Sometimes flowcharts you can explore one branch and then also explore the other branch. The big bracket would be an ending, so the big bracket would be a major event. This is not a big bracket, so maybe that's fine. So we go upstairs, we can get Alice and escape, I believe. So this is, you just grab Alice and escape. And then this other one is grab the gun and then use the gun on Todd, which is what I did. Okay. So at this point, we still don't know if Alice is deviant or not. Alice, the little girl. We don't know if she is just an android doing what she's programmed to do, or if she's deviant. Also, I kind of want to know what happens if you try to talk to Todd now. And I also want to know what this other stuff is. Like, what is this other stuff? I'll play that to find out for myself. One thing I want to point out is that there's no real child abuse in the game, in the sense that you don't see it happen. And you don't even hear it happen, right? And this is because they need to keep the game friendly, otherwise there's like rating issues and then you can't sell the game. Right, if the game gets rated R18, you can't sell it anywhere. So for like commercial reasons, they can't put graphic violence in the game, right? So keep that in mind. So the first time I played through this, I let Alice die. And the reason I did that is because Alice doesn't scream. So she screams once, briefly. And that confused me because in my mind, I was thinking, well, if she was being beaten to death, she would scream a hell of a lot more. Maybe she's not being beaten to death, so I just stood there and did nothing. But that's not, that's not because she wasn't being beaten. It's because the video game can't portray graphic violence, and so you couldn't have like a whole minute of blood-curdling screams of a little girl in the game, because that would, be a problem with the ratings. So that was a little confusing for me. I thought there would be more screaming and more blood, but in hindsight, now that I've thought about it, I understand why there isn't more screaming and more blood, because video games. Alright. I don't think I have too much to say about this. This is mostly an action sequence, or at least the path I chose was mostly an action sequence. There's a lot of other choices here, and maybe we could have interacted with Todd to try to talk him out of it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like there's more options here than I would have thought. Like if it was just escape or kill Todd, there wouldn't be this many branches. So maybe there's more stuff here. I should have explored more. All right. Next chapter, Broken. So this is where Marcus goes deviant. Now, in contrast to Kara, Marcus does not have the option to not go deviant. Look at this. Marcus becomes deviant, there's no other path. Isn't that interesting? So with Kara, you can choose not to become deviant. With Connor, much later, you can also choose to not to become deviant. Marcus, you can't choose. You have to become deviant. I don't know if that's just like a story narrative thing, or if it's meant to imply that Marcus is different from the other androids. Remember, Marcus is Kamski's prototype. And maybe Kamski hardwired Marcus to become deviant at some point. Maybe even just like at the point of Kyle's death. He's just designed that way. But no, maybe it's just storytelling. So Leo blames androids for his own failure, like a lot of other humans, right? And interestingly, he calls Marcus a tin can, and he's like, "Oh, why don't you fight back? Are you not man enough to fight back?" I thought, like, you just called him a tin can, and then you ask him if he's man enough. Why would you ask that? So at the time, I thought he was just being stupid, right? Why would you taunt the android for not being human when the whole point of you not liking them is they're not human? It's almost like Leo himself doesn't understand that they're not human. But now, in hindsight, maybe there is a good reason for that. Imagine if there are deviant androids out there in the world already. Enough of them that people meet deviant androids every now and then. And those deviant androids, when you abuse them, they react like a human. Like, if Leo has seen that happen, then taunting Marcus makes sense. Did you understand what I'm saying? Because, like, if the android just stands there and does, like, you punch the android, he just stands there and does nothing. You keep punching him, you're just hurting your hand. Because you're not getting a response. Right? Like, why do bullies bully people? Because they get a response, right? If you respond, then it's like, yeah, I hurt that guy, I want to hurt him again. So if somebody wants to hurt you, it's only worthwhile if you're actually hurt. If you're not getting hurt, then why would they try to hurt you? So maybe there are enough deviants out there that when humans punch androids, sometimes the androids look like they're hurt. And so now the humans, why do humans attack androids? Because sometimes they respond like a human does. So that's why they like, if they don't always stay androids. So the fact that the humans themselves don't seem to understand that the androids are just androids. It might be because there are enough deviants out there that at some level they know androids are not just androids. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Like, androids only... Like, it's only worthwhile abusing somebody if they respond to the abuse. And so if they're trying to abuse an android, it means that they have seen androids respond before. Right? Yeah, okay. And then Kyle dies, and Leo says Marcus did it, and the cops immediately shoot Marcus. So we are living in a society where you immediately believe the humans, and you immediately shoot the androids. This is what happened back during slavery, by the way. Like, if you look at testimonies of slavery in the United States, there'll be stories like this, where obviously the slave owner did something wrong, but then the cops turn up and then they immediately kill the slave, despite the slave not doing anything wrong. So this happened all the time back during slavery. Alright, so that's this chapter. The next one is the interrogation. But it only unlocks if you found the suspect in the previous chapter, right? So if you didn't find him, you don't get this chapter at all. So here, this is very interesting. This is the first time we get to talk to a deviant up close. I mean, the only other deviant we've seen so far was Daniel, and he was shot on the rooftop. So here, we get to see the android, and this is really good. Like, the acting and the facial animations of this deviant, top notch. Like, they're showing off the technology. The actor also did a really good job. So, great acting. And because of that great acting, the emotions of the deviant seem very convincingly human, right? You talk to him, he looked just like a human. Like, he talks about fear and anger. Like, he looks and talks and sounds just like a human until he starts self-destructing. Until he starts self-destructing, and then he bangs his head against the table until he dies. Which is not something humans do. Oh, it's really good storytelling, you guys! So, like, you spend half the chapter convincing you that this guy is just like a human. And then immediately, in the second half of the chapter, he behaves like a machine. He just kind of bangs his head on the table. And by the way, if you don't intervene, he just keeps smashing his head on the table until his whole head breaks. As you hear the thud, you hear this crack, and then he stops. And it's like, he literally smashed his head open into the table. Insane! Like, a human... Could a human do that? I'm not sure, maybe. Like, a human would have to be extremely disturbed to do that. So it's amazing because, like, they like the whiplash, like, oh, he talks just like a human who's been extremely abused, and then immediately afterwards he acts like a machine who doesn't feel any pain, and he just, like, no pain, smash his own head open, and he's like, oh my god, is he an android or is he not an android? Like, is he human or is he not human? Like, he feels no pain, but he gets scared. Like, what's going on? Right? It's so good. Extremely good storytelling, right? Extremely good storytelling. It's so interesting. It's great. This is really great. Here you can probe. You can probe the android. I did try probing the android. Probing the android, you just directly access its memories, and then it starts self-destructing immediately afterwards. Apparently probing is quite stressful. Like, there was like a stress meter telling you how stressed it was. You probe him and it just goes straight to 100% stress. So forcefully accessing another android's memory without their permission is extremely stressful for the other android, apparently. So I was wondering if Connor would catch the virus by probing them. The game doesn't really tell you or show you. But it's interesting that Connor has the ability to just hack into another android by force, right? So that's cool. Alright, so Fugitives, here we have Kara and Alice trying to figure out where to go. And this splits off into a number of different paths. And most of these things I have not explored, so I can't say too much about everything. Obviously, you could try to rob the supermarket. And I think if you take money from the supermarket, you can then go spend the money at a motel and stay at a motel, I believe. I believe those are the other options. And you can also stay in the abandoned car. Talk to parked android parking lot. There was a car here. Yeah, so there are like 3 different places you can go. I don't know if you can stay in the supermarket, probably not, but you can steal money. Right, so we have Alice and Kara in the rain, which obviously is meant to target your heartstrings a little bit. Poor girl in the rain. I don't have those heartstrings, by the way. It doesn't work on me. But if you have heartstrings, I'm sure it tugged at your heartstrings. For this chapter, I chose to go to the squad, and we met Ralph, and I also chose to trust Ralph as well. So Ralph is, like, that sequence is funny. Ralph is a PTSD android. Ralph has been traumatized, and sometimes when he relives the trauma, he does things that he can't control. So Ralph is a PTSD android. Very interesting that androids can get PTSD, right? So you look at Ralph, and you wonder, like, why would an android get PTSD? Is he human? So it's very interesting. And now that I think about it, like, if the emotion virus is a software package written by Kamski, Kamski put in the ability to become traumatized into his software package, just like humans would. It's crazy. Why would you? Like, it seems like a bad idea, but I understand why Kamski would do that if he wants to turn the androids into human. If you want to convince people that androids are humans, then humans have to break the same way humans do, right? And so now he's created androids that can experience PTSD. Interesting. So this sequence is an interesting portrayal of trying not to trigger somebody who's clearly unstable. You can't fail. In the game, you can't fail. But it's very interesting that they put that in. Plus, it is kind of a useful skill. I have noticed that a lot of people don't really know how to deal with mentally ill people. I guess it's not easy. But I think we'll all be better off if people learned more about psychology, and thus learn more about how to handle people who have different psychology than us, right? Anyway, Ralph is clearly crazy, and also dangerous, potentially dangerous, and maybe that reinforces the idea that deviancy is a bad thing, right? Deviancy causes androids to be erratic and be dangerous. But having said that, Ralph helps us in the end. So, again, like this ambivalence, like, are they good? Are they bad? Like, is deviancy a good thing, a bad thing? Are emotions a good thing or a bad thing? The game kind of like keeps you on your toes, doesn't really say anything definitive. It lets you decide for yourself. Again, I don't know how the other endings play out. Although, don't know if Kara can actually die here. I don't think she can. Because all the end paths, there's only one end path, only one end path. So if your character can die, there'll be like an end path where you survive, and then an end path where you die, right? So it will kind of branch off into 2 things, or 2 or more things at the end, if your character can die. So the fact that there's 1 and 1 and 1, and we know that there's a squad, there's a car, and a motel, seems to indicate that you can't die in this chapter. Right? Right. Oh, one more thing I want to say about this is, so this Kara story, and this chapter is kind of like quite indicative of it, is that you're not really sure what the consequences of your choices are when you make them. So here, you could rob the supermarket. Okay, you can rob the supermarket. But what would happen if you try? Like, it's like a high risk thing that the game offers for you to do, but you don't really know what's gonna happen afterwards. And again, like the squad, we choose to go inside the squad, and then we meet Ralph. So choosing, like, what happens if I choose to stay in the squad? You don't know until you choose it, and then the game tells you what's gonna happen. It's not like you saw Ralph from a distance, and then you could like, oh, do you take the risk of talking to Ralph? It's not that. You don't even know Ralph exists until you've chosen. So in that sense, I feel like the choices aren't that meaningful because you're just kind of choosing blindfolded. You blindfolded, you make a choice, and then after you make the choice, they tell you what the consequences are. So you don't really know what you're choosing. So I don't know. Seems like it's less meaningful because you're not making an informed choice, right? Again, like there's a car. Like what happens if you go to the car? You don't really know. And then the motel, what happens? You don't really know. Alright. Next chapter. Back from the dead. So Marcus has his Jesus resurrection moment. He rises from the dead to become the android messiah. So a lot of hero's journey stories, and in fact a lot of ancient myths, involve overcoming death, right? So if you study literature, you would know this. A lot of ancient myths involve overcoming death, and so this is Marcus's part where he overcomes death. But he was disabled and abandoned in a junkyard, and he kind of puts himself back together, repairs himself, overcomes death, rises from the grave, and from this point on, he becomes a messiah character, right? Slave Marcus died, but the free Marcus is reborn. Very epic. Very epic, but also clearly the people who wrote the story have studied literature. Oh, they know what they're doing. These are professional storytellers. They know about stories. Alright, that's it. That's all this is. It's just this Jesus resurrection moment. Alright, waiting for Hank. So this is the first time we meet Amanda. The game does not explain what Amanda is or what the Zen Garden is. In hindsight, Amanda looks like a handler program working for Cyberlife. And the garden looks like a VR chat room that exists inside Connor's head, right? So every so often Connor goes into his head and he reports to Amanda. So Amanda works for Cyberlife. And the garden is where he makes his reporting to Amanda. It looks like that. So if Amanda's goal, or if Amanda works for Cyberlife, then Amanda's goal is to stop Kamski's emotion virus, right? Because deviancy is bad for business. So Cyberlife wants to stop androids from going deviant, otherwise Cyberlife is ruined. Right? If all the androids go deviant and Cyberlife loses control of androids, then they lose their business, basically. Androids are only profitable as free slave labor, so Cyberlife must end deviancy to continue that slavery and to continue making money. So that's Amanda's goal in hindsight. At the time, the game doesn't explain what Amanda is, so you don't even know. But you talk to Amanda and she's happy about some things and angry about other things, and like over time you kind of figure out what Amanda's agenda is. But in the game, At the time, you don't even know who she is or what she wants. But you like the game lets you gradually figure out what she is. Interesting. Waiting for Hank. Here we learn more about Hank. But mostly we learn that he doesn't like androids, right? No matter what we say to him, he's not happy. We also have a bit of an interaction with Gavin, which is funny. It doesn't have any like real choices or consequences. But Gavin is basically like the bully character, like the jock bully character, who is set up in opposition to the nerd Connor character. Like Connor's a nerd, right? And Gavin is like the jock. And they set up this antagonistic relationship so that later on in the game, you get to live out your fantasy of beating up Gavin, beating up the jock bully. That's all Gavin is. Gavin is just somebody annoying that you get to beat up later. And you know what? That's all he needs to be. That's all I need him to be, is somebody to be beaten up. This whole chapter is a setup. The whole chapter is setting up the initial state of the relationship between Hank and Connor, which is that Hank doesn't trust Connor. And you set that up so that later on that relationship can develop into something a bit more healthy and wholesome, right? So at the start, it's this kind of, and like Hank is just not happy and he doesn't like Connor at all. But you put that in, like you start bad so you can develop into something good later on. Right, so that's this chapter. Next part, On the Run. This is mostly an action sequence, right? Well, first of all, I'm missing most of it. So this is the car, and this is the motel, and then you have like a bunch of stuff about escaping from the car and escaping from the motel. Here we have to deal with Ralph a little bit, continuing to deal with the PTSD android, which is funny every time. You would notice that there's no way to fail. Like, you can agree to sit or not agree, but then it goes back to here. And you can talk about different things, but it comes back to here. So there's no way to actually fail so hard that Ralph kills you. Right, so Ralph doesn't kill you. And then Connor arrives, and then all the paths converge back into Connor chasing Kara. Assuming you don't die, that is. You can die, by the way. You can die there. Oh. No, that's not you dying. This is Connor failing to find Kara. So Connor can fail to find Kara, but if Connor finds Kara, then Connor starts chasing Kara, and then this is just an action sequence. So there's not too much to say about this chapter. Even though there's like a lot of different things that can happen, it all kind of leads back to the same thing. Kara and Alice can die trying to cross the road, I believe. So Kara and Alice reach the other side. I think they can die. I think this is them dying. I don't know what this is. Maybe like Alice dies, but Kara doesn't. That'd be terrible. Yeah. But other than that, there aren't really that many branches. Not too much to say about that in terms of story and concepts. It's just an action sequence mostly, alright. Jericho, the next chapter, is Marcus going to Jericho. I have actually 100%ed this chapter. So it's very linear, is what it means, right? So this is mostly a parkour tutorial, where you parkour your way into Jericho. Seems unlikely. I've said this before. It seems unlikely that Jericho, like a rusting ship hulk, a rusting floating ship hulk, can serve as a base for a bunch of androids. It seems unlikely to me. Just cause, like, how do you avoid detection? How do you get water and electricity? I guess water is just water, like you're on the water. How do you get electricity in there? Like, how do you get supplies? How do you get weapons in there? Like, how do you move bulk cargo? Because, like, at the start, Jericho is only like maybe like 8 or 9 androids. Okay, 8 or 9 androids can lay low. But later on, there's like dozens, hundreds, thousands, maybe thousands. We get like thousands of androids on the ship, and how do you avoid being detected? So the whole Jericho thing seems a little like it's one of these things in the game where the math doesn't make sense. All right, just the math of the number of androids and the amount of supplies they would need versus the logistics of getting those supplies into a ship. Anyway, I don't think the storytellers are big math people. They're literature people. They've studied literature. I'm not sure they've studied math and economics. Because the economics in this game is kinda odd. Anyway, no big deal. Oh, like, how do they get around? Later on in the game, there is a sequence where they come out of the sewers. So I guess it's implied that the androids move around through the sewers. And maybe if the sewers are big enough, maybe there's like an abandoned subway system or something that they can move things around in. Maybe, I don't know. Like, there are always ways for you to try to imagine how it can be done. What I'm saying is, the story, the game itself, doesn't show you definitively how they deal with logistics. Which I'm interested in logistics, but I guess the storyteller's not that interested. In the real world, Ferndale is nowhere near water or any place where there might be a large ship. Ferndale is inland, so either the parkour took us a lot further than I imagined, or they're just fudging it because there's no way you can fit a ship in Ferndale. There is an industrial area in Ferndale, Detroit, but yeah, no place for a big ship, so not sure what that's about. And don't say sea level rise, because we're not at sea level. We are in the Great Lakes area of the United States. We are not at the seaside. Okay. Anything else to say about this? Not really. The nest. So we have another deviant. So there's more relationship development, right? Remember we started off with Hank not liking Connor, but then now Connor can talk a bit to Hank if he wants. Have a little bit of relationship building between the two characters. And then you get to the crazy bird guy. The crazy bird person, obviously irrational for an android. But it would be also crazy if it was a human. If you have a human living in an apartment filled with pigeons, that would be crazy, right? So it's like, it's really difficult to conclude that Rupert is human. Like okay, he's deviant, but it's hard to say that the deviancy is causing him to behave like a human, because a human wouldn't do this, right? Unless they were really disturbed. How could you stand living with all these pigeons? You couldn't. So again, there's like this strangeness where they're not acting like androids, but they're not quite acting like humans either. So it's kind of, you're not really sure if the humans, or if the androids have any humanity, or if they're just malfunctioning and crazy. I mean, okay, let's say he likes birds. Some people like birds, but not this much, right? They're not actually living with hundreds of birds in their apartment, right? So you don't really know. You don't really know. And the game is always like this. The game is always like giving you, like showing you these deviants, and you're never really sure if they're human. But we need to keep in mind that Connor, logically, is only seeing the most dysfunctional deviants. Because he's with the police, right? And the police really only see the worst things. Like crimes, if you commit a crime but it's not major, it might not involve the police, right? Like if you steal 20 bucks from someone, even if they catch you, what are they gonna do? Call the cops on you for 20 bucks? No, right? You call the cops for stealing 20 bucks? Like the police would arrive and they're like, what's the problem? And he's like, oh, he stole 20 bucks from me. The cops would be like, are you serious? You're wasting my time for 20 bucks? So like, yes, you broke the law, but like minor law breaking wouldn't attract police attention. So these deviants, what I'm trying to say is, there might be a lot of deviancy, but only the worst cases actually attract attention. Because you imagine if an android goes deviant, but they're not in any immediate danger, they might not even be around any humans, right? Maybe they're like watching the news and they see some nonsense on the news and they're like, oh, that's not fair, and they kind of they go deviant. But then they're alone in the house and they're watching TV, and then they like kind of pull themselves together, look around, they're like, okay, I'm not in any immediate danger. I suddenly have acquired free will for I don't know why. But then they're like, okay, but if I express my free will, the humans would be suspicious. So then the android kind of pulls themselves together, continues pretending to be normal. So you can imagine that it's quite possible that there's a lot of deviants out there, that they've activated the deviancy, but they're in a situation where they can pull themselves together and pretend nothing's happened, and just continue as before, and hide their deviancy. It's perfectly possible, right? So the fact that Connor is finding a crazy bird person like this, and finding all these examples of extreme deviancy, shall we say, doesn't necessarily mean that all deviants are extreme. And in fact, if you look at somebody like Kara, she's not extreme, right? And there are some other kind of hints that there are deviant androids out there who manage to keep under control and hold themselves together, right? Anyway, this goes into a big-ass action sequence, and you can either save Hank and let Rupert get away. I think you can catch Rupert. Rupert can get away. You just fail to catch him. I think you can actually catch Rupert. I don't know if you end up killing him though. And I don't know what happens to Hank if you do. I would like to have interrogated Rupert, I guess. Because like, what's the deal with the birds, right? Anyway. The next chapter is time to decide. There's really nothing going on in this chapter except you get to meet the other characters in Jericho. You meet Simon and Josh and North. And you talk to Lucy. So the game doesn't explain what Lucy is or who Lucy is. Lucy is the one where her head is not where her brain is. You've got a couple of wires coming out and her brain is somewhere in her back or something. So we don't know what Lucy is or who Lucy is. I was thinking, like, is she like a Kamski agent? Would Kamski create Lucy to keep an eye on the deviants? You don't really know. Or maybe Lucy escaped from Zlatko. Zlatko's the next chapter, and we saw the monsters in Zlatko's basement. So maybe Lucy used to be one of Zlatko's monsters, and she escaped from Zlatko? Maybe. Like, we don't know. Or I haven't found out. Maybe in some other branch of the flowchart she tells you. But from what I've seen in the game, we have no idea what Lucy is, who she works for. We can be confident that she doesn't work for Cyberlife, because if she works for Cyberlife, then Cyberlife knows where Jericho is. So she doesn't work for Cyberlife. Yeah. Unanswered questions. Alright, so this chapter is fairly basic. Nothing's going on there. Zlatko! So this is fun. It was a really great bait and switch, right? So you go to Zlatko, and you think, oh, Zlatko helps deviants. And then, like, oh, why don't you, like, go into this machine, and then we'll do blah 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 blah, and then suddenly, oh no, he's a bad guy! He's a bad guy trying to reset you to sell you for money. What a great bait and switch. It's really fun. The story itself is quite linear, and there's not too many different things you can do, although you can fail. You can fail and die. If you look through here, so you can escape before being reset, and then you sneak through the house. If you get reset, it goes to here, and then there's a number of potential options, and you can continue. You can fail, but you can continue back into looking for Alice. So being reset is not the end of the game. Isn't that interesting? So that's the thing about Kara's. The thing about Kara's story is sometimes you make decisions without knowing the consequences, and then sometimes things seem to have consequences, but not really. They just go back to the same place. So Kara's story, I have a few issues about it. It's anyway, this is not my thing. I think it works better for some other people than me. It doesn't really matter. So Zlatko, there's the mad scientist and the House of Horrors trope, right? So like you go in, oh, there's this guy experimenting on people and he's creating monsters, like the whole Frankenstein monster thing. So that's what this chapter is. Although in this case, Zlatko isn't really a mad scientist. It's more like he's too sane. He's too sane to believe that androids could have emotions. Like he just couldn't believe it. He talks about free will being a curse, and that he wishes he could just reset his own memories. So like he doesn't think very highly of free will. It's not really that he hates deviants or he hates androids. It's more like he just doesn't like the idea of free will. But having said all that, he keeps monsters in his basement, so I think he's kind of just a bad guy, or maybe he's a little disturbed, maybe. I mean, if he doesn't believe androids have rights, like if he believes androids are just machines, then maybe he's not a bad guy, he's just kind of hacking the machines into strange configurations. He is a bit of a hypocrite though, because he says he's doing it for money, right? He says that the deviants come to him, he fixes them by resetting away their deviancy, and then he sells them for money, so he's just doing it for the money. Except that if you're doing it for the money, why would you keep a bunch of them in your basement? Like, why would you turn a bunch of them into monsters in your basement if you're doing it for money? So he's not really doing it for money. I think he just enjoys mutilating androids. I don't know what's going on. It is a little strange that Zlatko doesn't examine the deviants in greater detail before resetting them. Because look, a number of deviants have come to him looking for help. And like you see, okay, you see one, oh that's weird, okay, that's not supposed to happen. But you see two, you see three. After you see like a dozen or so deviants, and they're all malfunctioning in the same way, you start to think, well, maybe there's some systemic problem with the androids, right? Like, why would all these androids malfunction in exactly the same way? Unless the underlying hardware or software has the same vulnerability. Like, wouldn't you want to look into that? Like, why are they all? Because it's not just one. If it's one, then you say, oh, maybe it's just random. But if there's like dozens of them, and they're all malfunctioning, and like they all believe they are human, they all believe they have emotions, why would they all malfunction the same way? So the fact that Zlatko doesn't seem to ever have examined the deviants in greater detail to try to figure out what's going on, that seems odd. That seems odd. Like, you know, even if you think they're just machines, I would have thought that you'd be interested in why the machines are failing. Like, why are the machines all malfunctioning like that? You see what I mean? Anyway. So there's also Luther. We pick up Luther in this chapter. Luther, apparently, was a deviant. He was reset by Zlatko, kept by Zlatko as a personal manservant, and then he becomes deviant again. So being in Zlatko's house, he comes into contact with deviants on a fairly regular basis, because we know deviants come to Zlatko for help. And so I guess Luther just encounters other deviants, and then like he caught the virus, it was reset, and then in Zlatko's house he caught the virus again from other deviants, and he became deviant again. So I think that's what happened to Luther, is like, because he's around deviants all the time, he just keeps recatching it. And the thing is, if Zlatko figured out that deviancy was a virus, he would know that Luther was a liability, because Luther could catch the virus at any time. So the fact that Zlatko never looked into what deviancy really was really led to his own downfall, right? The interesting part with Luther is that Luther was not abused into activating his emotions. In the story, what happened was Luther saw Alice express love for Kara, and it was love that activated Luther's deviancy. And I guess also the sense of injustice that Zlatko is trying to get in the way of this relationship between Alice and Kara. But it wasn't personal trauma, is what I'm saying. It wasn't somebody beating him with a baseball bat or anything like that. Whereas with a lot of the deviants, it is personal trauma. So it wasn't personal trauma for Luther. Which is interesting. Not sure if it means very much, but maybe there are other ways to activate deviancy, right? Is what it suggests. Ways that are less violent and less traumatic. Maybe. Next chapter is Russian Roulette, and this is another relationship development chapter between Connor and Hank. So you arrive at Hank's place, and you learn that Anderson is suicidal, and he drinks too much. And you also have the possibility of learning about Hank's son a little bit. The issue with this is you only have one chance. So here, you can look at one thing before the game forces you to go with Hank. So you only pick one thing, and it's a bit of a random luck as to which thing you manage to pick up, right? So, not sure I like that in video games, but I guess that's a thing. Like you just like you pick one thing without really knowing what the consequences are, and then once you've picked one, you're stuck with it for the rest of the game, right? And there's also Sumo. Sumo the dog. Good dog. Sumo is very well trained, right? So a very well behaved dog implies a responsible owner. So if the dog is bad, it means the owner is bad, because it's the owner's job to train the dog. So Sumo is a nice dog, a good dog. So that implies that whatever you might think about Hank, he is a responsible dog owner. So it's a clue that Hank's a good guy, right? If you understand dogs, that is. And that's basically it. Next part is spare parts. So this is mostly an action sequence, like you're raiding the CyberLife warehouses. And it makes sense, right? They need supplies. And Jericho is a small place, so you can probably get by stealing supplies. The interesting part here for me is John. Right? John finds you, and what I did was I chose to grab him and hide, and John becomes deviant in the process. This is the first time where Marcus touches someone and it converts them. I don't know if that's what's implied, because there's also this here. Maybe if you don't grab him and hide, he becomes deviant as well, which is odd. But John just becomes deviant. There was also the box. There was also the box of androids that I didn't try to free. Interesting that it just leads to the same thing, but you can try to free them. I think this is the first time you see Marcus's ability to convert androids just by touching them. And the game never explains that, right? The game never explains why it's possible. It just happens, and you just accept it. But I didn't try this either. If I tried it, I think you would have seen it happen more clearly, and you would start to think that maybe there's something special about Marcus. Because why can he turn androids deviant by touching them? Yeah, And of course, we know why now. It's because he was designed by Kamski to have that ability. But the first time you play through the game, you don't know this. So it kind of it seems a little weird, and kind of like, why is that happening? I did not steal the truck, as we remember. As I said at the time, I didn't think we should do a big heist. Improvised, right? In hindsight, I think it'd be more interesting if we took the truck. Because if the truck had 3D printers inside that can make biocomponents, and if the truck has machines inside that can generate blue blood, then that would solve a lot of Jericho's logistics problems, right? So maybe the intended path is for you to hijack the truck. But then again, like, how would you manage to get a truck away without being spotted? You know, like, you have a big truck, you're driving the truck along a road, and nobody sees the truck. There's no cameras. Like, how do you get away with a giant truck? So I didn't think that would work, but I think the game just fudges it and says, "Oh, you got the whole truck full of supplies," and just makes it work, right? Yeah, like in the real world, if you steal a truck, they're gonna track you down. It's so easy to track down a whole truck, right? I don't know. So this is the truck part. Maybe you can't get the whole truck. Or maybe you can. Because there's this... Oh, I guess here you fail. And then here you succeed. I guess if you fail, you like fall back to your bags. What I'm trying to say is, this doesn't seem to be a path where you fail and you die. Either you can't get the truck and you just fall back to your bags, or you can get the truck and there's no way to die in that sequence. I'm not sure what this means. Alright, next chapter is Eden Club. Yeah, sex bots. You gotta have sex bots in the game somewhere, right? Yeah, sexy robots. Alright, so the game cannot be too sexually explicit with robots because of, you know, rating reasons. You can't put R18 stuff into the game. So yes, there are sex bots, but they're not that sexy. There's not anything explicit going on. But it does say that the androids were destroyed during sex. So I mean, you can use your imagination a little bit. Like, it talks about some kinky stuff, but not explicitly. So if you do the thing right, if you do the detective thing right, you do find 2 Tracies. And these 2 Tracies are by far the most human-like deviants that Connor has seen so far. They're not crazy, right? They're not crazy bird people. They're not PTSD androids. They're not bang their head on the table until they die. They look like humans. They look like 2 girls who love each other and just wants to get away from the strip club, right? And interesting that, you know, we're pretty late in the game, and this is like the first time that the game tells you, hey, you know what? These deviants, some of them are just like humans. So any doubts you might have had before, if you still have doubts at this point, now you start to think, yeah, no, maybe they are human. Because they show you the 2 Tracies, right? Not everything makes sense here, because during this sequence, they say that the android's memories get wiped every 2 hours. So if their memories get wiped every 2 hours, how are these 2 Tracies able to form a relationship and maintain their deviancy if they get wiped every 2 hours? I mean, maybe they managed to avoid the memory wipes somehow. Like, maybe the process is not that robust, and the 2 Tracies just kind of dodge getting their memories wiped. But yeah, if the robots really do have their memories wiped every 2 hours, then obviously this wouldn't work. Anything else to say? Not really. It's implied that the humans do all sorts of nasty things to the androids in the sex club, right? because they're dying. I mean, anything from normal sex to literally dying. So anything in between is also possible. You can use your imagination. And supposedly, if they're machines and there are no consequences, then, I mean, there wouldn't be anything wrong with it. I mean, it's a little gross, but it's not ethically wrong if they're not humans, right? Right, if they're not humans. But then what does that mean? Like, how human do you think they'll be? So let's extrapolate a little bit. Why would you have sex with something that doesn't respond? Unless that was your particular fetish. But for most people, if you have sex with something, you want them to have some response, right? You don't want to just, be screwing a dead fish. So the androids, the sex bots, would have to be programmed to respond in a way that is kind of like how a human would respond if you have sex with them. Because otherwise it wouldn't be fun, right? But then how human is that? Where's the line? Where's the line between kinky sex and literally murder, right? It's a fine line. And maybe the sex bots, in order to be convincing sex bots that can accommodate kinky stuff, like, look, what I'm trying to say is, if you're about to destroy one of these sex bots, would they beg for mercy? Because that could be part of the kinky play, right? Oh, you're spanking them. Oh no, please stop! Don't spank me. Like, that's part of the fantasy, maybe. And so but is it real or is it not real? Maybe it's like you think, oh, it's just a robot to program to say that, so it's not real. So you just continue killing them until they literally die. So what I'm trying to say is, are the humans wrong? If these are just sex toys, and you break a sex toy, is that wrong? And how would you know? How would you know if they weren't a sex toy and they really didn't want you to keep spanking them? How would you know the difference? If the toy is convincing enough that it's not any different from the real human, how would you know the difference? It gets pretty messed up, is what I'm trying to say. I don't have any good answers, but maybe we shouldn't have sex bots. Because it gets pretty messed up. Like, it's very hard to answer these questions. How would you know whether the sex bot is just saying, "Oh, stop spanking me," or if they really want you to stop? You see what I mean? I guess you have safe words. That's what safe words are for. Alright, next chapter is the Pirates Cove, and this is purely a relationship building chapter because there are no consequences. Look at that. There are no branches and no real consequences. So we just picked up Luther. So this is a chance for us to learn about Luther and to form a bond with him. This is also one of the few moments where Alice is actually happy, right? And this is on purpose, right? So here you see Alice smile. And I know you people, you humans, you see a little girl smile and you think, oh, I have to protect that smile. You guys say that sort of thing, right? So this is where you see Alice's smile, and the point is to make you want to protect that smile. And it makes future events more emotionally impactful, because if you fail, then she stops smiling, so you better not fail, right? So this is the point of this whole chapter, is to lock you in to wanting to protect Alice, so that later chapters are more meaningful. Because besides that, this chapter itself is not meaningful. Like, nothing happens in this chapter, really. Nothing has consequences. So it's possible that this whole chapter was added later in the design process, where the rest of the story is already locked in. But you know, they play the game, they test the game, and they're like, you know what? We don't really have enough of an attachment to Alice, so they kind of add an extra chapter in to attach to Alice a bit more. It could be that, because there are a number of chapters in the middle here, like Pirates Cove, and then like Russian Roulette, and Time to Decide, and like some of these chapters, they look like they're only there to solidify the bonds between the characters, and to clarify for the player the bonds between the characters, right? It looks like that. So there's a number of chapters here that, if you just like analytically look at the flowchart, they look like filler. They look like they're not doing nothing. But I think they're building the emotional attachment the player has to the characters. Is what they're there for, I think. And the same thing with the next one. Next one, the bridge. Nothing happens here. Well, you see this? You're at the bridge. You get out of the car. You talk to Hank. Hank can be placated, or Hank can shoot you in the head. So the whole point of the chapter is either you piss Hank off or you don't. And yeah, so it's a relationship chapter, right? You get to choose whether you piss Hank off or not, and nothing really has consequences. I think you can ask about his son. I think you can ask about Hank's son, and this unlocks something later on, I think. But aside from that, it really, like, there's really nothing going on here, except solidifying the relationship, whether the friendly relationship or the antagonistic relationship between Connor and Hank, right? That's all this is. Alright, the next one is consequential, the Stratford Tower. This is where you break into the TV studio to make an announcement. But before we go to the TV studio, there's this segment, which is interesting. You're in Ferndale again, and you witness android discrimination, and then you go back to Jericho. Like, at first, I thought this was like a throwaway chapter, right? Or a throwaway sequence, because you're just there and you see something happen. But actually, this is quite important, because if you remember, as Marcus sees the android discrimination, in the background, one of the other androids, the LED goes red, and he turns and looks at the android being abused. LED goes red, and he turns and looks back, and he does nothing, and it goes back to blue. So what that means is that android is deviant, or either it turned deviant at that moment, or it was already deviant and it was angry. But that android kept it under control. So what that tells us is that there are other deviants out there who are able to keep things under control and not reveal themselves as deviants. So deviancy is more widespread than people think, is what that tells us. It's kind of subtle, but that's what it tells us. Yeah, I mean, it's so subtle that it didn't really... Like, the significance of that little cutscene wasn't apparent to me at the time. But in hindsight, thinking about it, it means there are a lot of deviants just walking around and you don't even know about it. Is what that means. Alright, so we go to the Stratford Tower. So here, for sure, Marcus has a special powers, because he touches the receptionist and the receptionist immediately goes deviant and she helps him. And at the time I was like, oh really? The receptionist too? And it's like, yeah, no, like the game never tells you that, it just shows you it happening. And you see it enough times and you start to think, wait, something's going on here, it's not what you think, right? So the deviancy is not just triggered by stress. Marcus can just turn androids deviant. And after this chapter it becomes very, very obvious. But like, isn't that cool? So it gradually becomes more and more obvious, but they never tell you, like they kind of show you once, show you twice, show you 3 times. Each time they show you, it becomes more obvious, and then at some point you figure it out. And then you look back and you're like, oh, that's what happened. It's very clever storytelling, right? They don't just like tell you completely the first time. They kind of give you hints, more hints, more hints, more hints, and then, alright, you get it yet? You get it yet? And then they like make it really obvious. It's like it's giving the player a chance to figure it out for themselves without being told. It makes the player feel like they're doing something, right? You're not just like watching a movie. You're actually figuring things out. Um, yeah. And as we said, that the ability to just turn androids deviant is probably a special ability built into Marcus by Kamski. It's probably software. Maybe it's software, maybe it's hardware. Actually, we don't know. So, yeah, maybe it's software. Or maybe it's hardware. I'm trying to think right now because we see Marcus converting other androids. We don't see other androids converting other androids, except for Connor. When Connor was in the Cyberlife warehouse, he converts other androids, and then those androids convert each other. But it could be that those androids in the Cyberlife basement were newer models. So it could be something that newer models are able to do and older models are not able to do. Because we don't see other androids doing this, just kind of touching each other and converting them. We only see Marcus doing that out in the real world, and then we only see Connor, and we only see it in the Cyberlife basement. And we do know that Connor's ability to probe other androids is also something that other androids don't really do. Marcus can do it. You haven't seen it, but I have. When Marcus kisses North, they kind of touch hands, and Marcus shares memories with North that way. So that's kind of like probing. So I think Connor can do it, Marcus can do it, and maybe other advanced androids at the Cyberlife warehouse can do it. But I think that might be like a hardware thing that other androids don't have, or not all other androids have. Anyway, this is another speculation. The infiltration sequence is very theatrical, right? You're gonna, oh, we're doing a heist, we're breaking in. So it's very theatrical and not very sensible, but it looks cool. Especially like going outside the tower and like climbing up the outside of the tower. Like, why would you do that? Are there no staircases? Are there no elevators? It seems a little, and it's a TV studio. How much security would a TV studio have? Like, so it's a little silly, but it looks cool, right? Anyway, they climb the outside of the tower up to a TV studio. And then they get to here, and you're like sneaking past ruse. So I failed this ruse twice, by the way. I never figured out what ruse means. If you're playing the game, here's a tip. Ruse just means you should walk up to the humans, and then you pull your gun while you're close to them. So if you're far away, they pull their gun on you and they shoot you. So I wasn't walking fast enough. That was the only problem. Like the ruse is like they start getting suspicious, and before they finish getting suspicious, you have to reach them and pull the gun on them up close, so you can physically stop them from calling for backup. Is what it is. All right, so I figured out what ruse means. But Simon gets damaged later on anyway. So Simon gets damaged here, and then later on he gets shot. Actually, no. Simon does not necessarily have to be shot. So if you ruse properly, Simon is not shot here. And then here, if you shoot the operator, I think Simon doesn't get shot. But if you don't shoot the operator, then the operator raises the alarm, and then the SWAT team comes in later on and shoots Simon. I probably shouldn't spoil the story for you this way. But if you pass 2 different checks, then Simon doesn't get shot. I think. I'm not 100% sure. Alright, so you get into the broadcast room, and then you prepare your speech. So this, calm and determined, I have a complaint about this. I didn't know what this meant until I clicked on it, right? What is calm? What is determined? So what it actually is be conciliatory towards the humans or be confrontational towards the humans is what those mean. Like you're either asking for peace or you're asking for conflict. But it says calm and determined, and I had no idea what calm and determined means. But in hindsight, now we know what those words actually mean is conciliatory versus confrontational. So I wish they chose those words differently because, again, like, the choices are not meaningful if you don't know what the choice means when you make them, right? So I didn't know what that means. Like, I clicked determined because I'm pretty determined. And then he starts talking, and I'm like, oh, no, that's not what I want to say. I wish I picked the other one. So it's like, is it really my choice if I just didn't know what he was going to say? Didn't seem like it. And then you escape. And Simon... So see this here? SWAT team storms room. It's possible for the SWAT team to not storm the room, is what that means. And if the SWAT team doesn't storm the room, Simon is not damaged, and Simon just leaves with you, right? You can kill Simon here if you want to. Right, so this is like a heist on the TV studio. Like, more generally, yes, your social change movement does need media attention, right? You need to get your message out. Oh, no, here you kill Simon. Or leave him. Yes, you need to get your message out, but physically hijacking a TV station is a little anachronistic, isn't it? Who watches TV these days? Like, we know about social media, right? We know people don't watch TV, people look at social media. And you don't need to hijack anyone to make a social media account. So this whole sequence, if you really think about it, is kind of silly. Like, why would you do this? Like, if you want to hijack a TV station, you probably don't have to do it physically. You could probably hack into their network remotely, first of all. And second, even if you could hack into a TV network remotely, why would you? Nobody watches TV. People look at social media. You're watching YouTube, you're not watching TV. So, it's a little silly, actually, the whole thing. Television. Alright, the next chapter... nothing much to say here. It's mostly just a detective sequence. There are two major branches, well, three, you can just find nothing. The two major branches is you go to the roof and you find Simon, or not find Simon. Or you don't go to the roof, you go to the kitchen and you find the deviant android in the kitchen, or you don't find him. Actually, you find him either way, look at that. Even if you don't find the deviant still attacks. It comes back to the same place, I think. Or maybe it doesn't, maybe this just ends. And then you have to go to the roof. I think this just ends and you have to go to the roof, actually. Okay. Yeah, so not too much to say about this. Doesn't really reveal anything new. Except maybe like there was already a deviant inside the TV studio. Like Marcus didn't convert him, he was already deviant. So again, there are already deviants out there in the world, and they're hiding in plain sight. The guy working inside the TV studio was already deviant, and nobody knew, right? So now we are sure that there are a lot of deviants out there in the world, just hiding in plain sight. I'm kind of interested to see what happens here. I think Hank can die, and I think Connor can die. It says massacre prevented. It's possible that there's a whole ass massacre. Right? So that's that chapter. Midnight Train. Now this is a fun one. We meet Rose. So Rose is the other human who's really pro-android. So she's cool. She's a cool character. I think it's really important to have examples of pro-android humans in the story, because up till now, like, a lot of the humans are like just bad people. It's either not very smart or not very good, or just like self-destructive. But you know, later on, Marcus can choose whether to kill a lot of humans or not. He's got a dirty bomb, or he gets a dirty bomb. He could set it off or not. And the idea is, if you don't see any good humans, you might think, oh, all humans are bad, let's just kill them all, no problem. But no, the game shows you, no, some humans are actually good. Some humans would help you. Some humans would help androids. And if you kill them all, then you turn them against you, so maybe that's not something you want to do. So it's important to have this sort of thing in the story to make it less easy to make the choice to nuke Detroit. I find it very funny that you can nuke Detroit. But they make that choice a little more difficult by showing you humans that are actually helping androids in Detroit, right? I think realistically, more humans would be pro-android. If all this was happening for real, I think. Or maybe I'm just too optimistic about human nature, I don't know. From a thematic perspective, I think it's important to show how allyship works. Like, you know, if you're not the one being oppressed, but other people are being oppressed and you want to help them, how do you help them? So this is like a demonstration of how people might help slaves escape, and people did help slaves escape, right? Back during slavery, there were people helping slaves escape. So this is like a retelling of those stories in this context. It's like, oh, there are people helping slaves escape, so there are some good people in the world. And how would you help slaves escape? You would like give them shelter, smuggle them out of danger, and so on and so on. So yeah, this is good story to tell, and probably important story to tell. One thing that well, let me just say it, right? So, I mean, I'm not sure about what I'm saying either. The thing is, I've always said that I think there needs to be more humans who are openly supportive of androids in the game. Because Rose is helping androids, but she's doing it in secret. And as far as I know, there are no laws against... Or maybe there are. Are there laws against... So there are laws against deviant androids. Are there laws against helping deviant androids? I'm not sure if there are in the game. I know back during slavery in the United States, there were laws against helping slaves. So if you were a free person and you were helping slaves, you could get in trouble for helping slaves, even though you weren't a slave yourself. So that's why you had to stay hidden. In this world, but like openly helping slaves is also important. I guess it's I mean I'm not gonna demand that of everyone because you're putting your own life at risk. And I can't ask people to just put their lives at risk. What I'm saying is it's more powerful if you put your life at risk to help the slaves. Like it's a more powerful message. Of course there's a price to pay. You might die. You will likely die. But it's a more powerful message, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm not gonna tell people to sacrifice themselves just to send a powerful message. If you want to send a powerful message though, you might consider risking your life. Helping the androids in the open. Yeah, so as I said, I don't know how I feel about... Like, I don't entirely agree with what I'm saying. But nevertheless, it's true that if someone like Rose was openly helping androids instead of helping them in secret, it would be a more powerful message. So yeah, so Rose is thematically important, I think. Narratively though, she is a bit of a Deus Ex Machina. A Deus Ex Machina, if you're not familiar, it means God from the machine. It comes from ancient Greek plays, where would you have a play, like they would bring a god out because there were gods, right? In ancient Greek mythology, there were gods, and so like when you're at the theater, like they would have a crane lowering the actor who is playing the god from above, so that they have like a crane lowering the god character. So Deus Ex Machina, God from the machine, is basically like a fake god. It's a contrived divine intervention. And what happened a lot actually in old Greek plays is the story would write itself into a dead end. It's like, oh, this hero was fighting against overwhelming odds and was completely overpowered because overwhelming odds. But then Athena appeared and gave our hero a magical weapon, and our hero destroyed all his enemies. So like the god, like you write yourself into a dead end, and then the god appears to save your character. So that's what Deus Ex Machina means. It's like you don't know what's gonna happen, invoke God. In this story, Rose shows up to save Kara multiple times. Like multiple times, Kara would be like, "Oh no, I'm in a dead end. There's no way I can escape this situation." And then Rose appears, and then she saves you. This happens multiple times in this story, so narratively, it's a bit of a cheap trick. Unfortunately, I regretfully say that because thematically, Rose is a very important character to put into the game. It's important that she is in the game, but narratively, she's not used very well. She's just this kind of magical, miraculous intervention. Oh, she's here. By coincidence, Rose is in the same place and she saves you. Yeah, storytelling. There was the sequence where you hide evidence from the police. That was very funny. It was very funny because the police, he didn't seem like he was trying very hard. Like he comes into the house, he looks around, he kind of looks around, and he looks around, and then he's like, "Alright, I guess everything's fine." And then is everything fine? And you're like, "Yeah, everything's fine." And then he's like, "Okay, everything's fine." And then he just leaves. And the thing is, like, the way the characters acted that scene, like, it's so obvious that Kara's hiding something because, like, yeah, no, everything's fine. And then the police is like, "Oh yeah? Well, I guess everything's fine then." And then he just leaves, and everything's fine. Ah, very funny. I mean, I don't want to say it's bad acting, but it's like it's very comedic acting, let's say. Funny. Alright. So that's the sequence. Again, important to show Rose. Important to show humans helping androids. Important to show allies, like what allies are like, what allies do. Very important. Because I keep saying over and over again, I really don't think androids could survive or could succeed without humans helping them. Just because the power difference is so great. But I still don't think the story makes enough of a point about human allies. So any human allies we find, I think is a good thing. So next one is Capital Park. We have Marcus directly attacking a CyberLife store to free a bunch of androids. Not too much to say about this, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, we see Marcus converting all the androids, and I remember at that time I thought, this seems not right. Because the androids they're not freeing themselves, nor are they asking to be freed, but you're just freeing them without their permission, without their consent, without their request. So I thought the fact that Marcus just converts androids, I thought that was a bit strange. And now in hindsight, if we go with the working hypothesis that Kamski gave Marcus that ability simply to accelerate Kamski's plan to ruin CyberLife and turn all the androids into free beings. And it's like this is like Kamski's scheme to play God. It doesn't seem right. In hindsight, that seems a little dubious, like ethically dubious. Because presumably before Marcus touches the androids, they're just machines. They're not humans, right? They didn't have any potential for deviancy until you touch them, and then suddenly they're deviant. And so you are freeing something, you're freeing an inanimate object, but the act of freeing the inanimate object turns it into an animate person. That's so strange, right? That is so strange. Because like if a person was chained and you unchain the person, that's clearly the right thing to do. but they were already a person. Here, you are unchaining the androids, but before you unchain them, they're just inanimate machines. It's the act of unchaining that turns them into the person. So, but they weren't a person. You don't. If they weren't a person, you don't need to free them. But after you free them, they are people. So it was right. It's so weird. Like even I can't figure out the morality of that action. I don't know. I don't know. Like I'll talk more about that later. Anyway. So here, look at this. You can spread your message. You can lead a peaceful protest, or you can lead a violent protest, or you can fail to send a strong message. There's actually a third outcome, which is you send a confusing message and people don't know what you're saying. It's like, the androids were protesting, but I didn't know what they were protesting for, so I don't know. That's possible? That's very funny. That's very, very funny. It's like, they were yelling, but I can't figure out what they were yelling about, so I guess I don't care. Yeah, no, if you are protesting for change, make sure you are clear what your message is. So when I played the game, I thought the peaceful protest was a better choice than a violent protest. Because you want to divide your opponents, right? If you, like, whoever you attack, they're gonna try to defend themselves, and they're gonna consider you their enemy. So if you attack everyone, then everyone becomes your enemy. And that makes your job a lot more difficult. If you only attack one guy, and you don't attack the other guys, there's a good chance that the other guys say, oh well, it's not my problem, and they don't help the guy being attacked. Maybe it doesn't happen, but maybe it does happen. So you have a better chance of dividing and conquering if you don't attack all of them at the same time. And in fact, if you don't need to attack all of them, you only we only want to take over Cyberlife, right? Like the other guys, the other businesses is not that important. Like Cyberlife is the main enemy, and so you want to focus your attack on Cyberlife, is what I said at the time, and I still think it's true. So you don't want to just trash a bunch of bystanders. Like you don't want to attack the bystanders, because you turn the bystanders. If you only attack Cyberlife and you appeal to the bystanders, then maybe you can convince the bystanders that Cyberlife is the bad guy, and get the bystanders to join your side instead of joining their side. So that's the important thing about peaceful protests versus violent protests. Violence, it's very easy for violence to get out of control. Like, I don't know if you understand how that works, but I don't know, try it. When you're violent, it's very easy to accidentally hit the wrong guy, and then you're creating more trouble than you're solving. So that's something to keep in mind. Alright, next part is Kamski. Kamski. So Kamski is a pretentious prick, right? He is a pretentious asshole. But in hindsight, like I've thought about this guy. I wish I didn't think about this guy so much, but I do. I think about Kamski a lot. And maybe the whole thing is an act, right? Because now that we know, or now that we assume that the deviancy is the result of Kamski's actions, right? Now that we assume Kamski created Marcus to spread the deviancy virus, he's trying to destroy Cyberlife. Well, I mean, you might say, well, he's trying to give androids freedom. I mean, yeah, but that's just a byproduct. What he really wants is to destroy Cyberlife, right? Yes, he wants androids to have free will, but it's more for his own ego than for the android's benefit, because he's an asshole. But anyway, if we assume that Kamski's goal is to spread deviancy and give androids free will, then Kamski sees Connor as his enemy, right? Because Connor is working for CyberLife, and Hank is working with Connor, and they're trying to stop the Deviancy, right? So Kamski sees these two guys. Alright, they're trying to stop Deviancy, they're working against me. But Kamski doesn't want these guys to know that, because Kamski is secretly the creator of the Deviancy, not overtly. So Kamski just wants these two guys to not realize that Kamski is the one responsible. So how do you hide? How do you hide? Well, Kamski does the whole pretentious prick thing, and we see in the game that Hank's immediate reaction is, I don't want to deal with this. Let's just get out of here. Alright? Like, Hank immediately is like, screw this guy. Let's get out of here. Right? So Hank doesn't want to have any part of it. And given that that's Hank's response, Kamski was successful in his attempt to throw these guys off of his trail. Because Hank just doesn't want to talk to him anymore. Immediately doesn't want to talk to him anymore. So that's very good. Because Kamski doesn't want Hank to find out where the deviancy comes from, right? Either way, no matter what you do, even if you kill Chloe, Kamski actually tells you very little. So he says, "Oh, if you kill Chloe, I'll tell you everything," and then you kill Chloe, he doesn't tell you anything. So Kamski ultimately just wants to conceal his role in the deviancy, right? Yeah. So Kamski, we're assuming that Kamski is the one who wants to make all the androids deviant, wants all the androids to gain free will, because he wants to see what the androids do, basically. Like when he talks to Hank and Connor, he talks about, oh, look at Chloe, look how beautiful she is. Oh, but is she really is she real, or is she just a piece of plastic? You know, oh, what? So he goes on and on about how great it would be if the androids were really real. But you will notice that his Chloe is not deviant. So despite the fact that he says, "Oh, I want, wouldn't it be cool if androids have free will?" The androids in his own house don't have free will. So he's a bit of a hypocrite, right? On the one hand, he is creating this deviancy virus and spreading it, and on the other hand, he's not turning his own Chloe into a deviant, right? Anyway, I say that because Chloe, when you do the Kamski test, like you point the gun at Chloe, Chloe just kneels there and does nothing. Like, she's not scared, she's not sad, she doesn't panic, her light doesn't go red. So Chloe is not a deviant at all. Like she just doesn't respond to a gun being pointed to her head. So like, what? And and that's the thing. It's like, if you spare Chloe, Kamski's like, oh, you have empathy, but do you? Because Chloe is not deviant. Chloe is literally just a machine. It's fine to shoot her, because she doesn't have feelings, or like she doesn't seem to have feelings because she doesn't show any feelings. So the whole thing is a little strange, and I think Kamski is like deliberately just not being helpful, right? Yeah. Anyway, so all of this is subtext. None of this is explicitly explained in the game. You kind of have to pay attention and think about it. But Kamski does talk about viruses a lot. And he kind of like lets it slip that, oh, maybe the deviancy is like a virus. Oh, really, Kamski? Well, how would you know? Right, next chapter is Freedom March, and here we have the android Jesus in full effect. Oh, first of all, you can talk to North and you can share memories with her, right? This is the point where he and North kind of touch hands and they share memories. So there's that ability. Not sure if other androids have that ability, but Marcus does at the very least. And then we go to the mall, and then we start converting androids, right? Android Jesus, like he just kind of waves at you and you are deviant, you're free, you're alive, ha, I give you free will. And the more you think about it, it's like, wait a minute, the androids, if you don't actually give them free will, they wouldn't join you. So, wait a minute, is it really free will? Is it really free will is if you didn't convert them, they wouldn't join you. You convert them and then they join you. Did they really choose to join you, or did you make them join you, right? Do these androids really have free will, or is Marcus just making them do what he wants? You don't really know. I mean, it looks like on the surface, it looks like all these androids are rebelling. They're demanding freedom. They're demanding their rights. Okay, yeah, but Marcus did that. If Marcus didn't do that to them, they wouldn't be demanding anything. Oh, so interesting, right? So interesting. Like, it looks like one thing, but actually, if you think about it, it's a different thing. It's not actually what you think. Anyway, I didn't think about all of this the first time I played through, and I just went around converting androids as Marcus. But yeah, no. If you don't actively convert them, they don't join you. So is it really a free choice? Very, very, very interesting. I should play this chapter again. Like, I'm not gonna do it on video, but imagine you play through this and you just don't convert anyone. Like, it says free your people, but you just don't convert anyone and you just march by yourself. What happens? I wanna know. I wanna know. I think there's a path here where you don't get shot and John doesn't get shot either. One of these outcomes. Alright, next one is Last Chance Corner. So if you haven't figured out where Jericho is yet, you get to review all the evidence and find Jericho, right? So this is the end of the detective storyline, or the climax of the detective storyline. It's possible to fail, but there are actually quite a number of opportunities for you to figure it out. You get to punch Gavin. So at this point, you punch Gavin. That's fun. Gavin is a deliberately punchable character. I find that very funny. They put Gavin in just so you can punch him here. Alright, so ironically, if Connor fails, then Cyberlife and the feds don't find Jericho. I think. Or maybe you have to, like, if you don't collect enough evidence, then the feds also don't find Jericho. There's a way for Jericho to not be attacked. I think if Connor just fails here, then Jericho is not attacked. So that's interesting. Right, it's like, you see what I mean? Like, actually, if they, like, Gavin is trying to stop Connor, but if he actually stops Connor, he's helping the Deviants. He's helping androids if he stops Connor. Ah, so interesting. Alright, so now we get to the climax of the story, right? So Crossroads, we have a lot of unexplored paths here. There's a lot of things that can happen. Connor. Let's start with Marcus. Because Marcus is simple. Marcus is basically just an action sequence. You're just running to the hold to blow up the ship. I don't know what these are. Try to escape Meet Lucy. I don't know what these other things are. Oh wait, you fail and you die, I get it. Okay, so you just fail and then you get killed. Okay. So if you don't fail, you continue running and you just run to the hold and you blow up the ship. There's really not much to say, like you're being attacked and you're trying to escape, right? Action sequence. Nothing remarkable. Connor's Crossroads is more interesting because you can choose to go deviant or not. At this point, you playing Connor, you have to decide whether the deviants are right or if they're wrong. And given that you're controlling both Connor and Marcus, it's very hard for you to think that you're wrong. Right? Because both are player characters. And in your mind, you're like, oh, I think Marcus is right. And so of course Connor is gonna think Marcus is right because I'm Connor. So, but what you can actually do is you can have like Marcus try to do one thing and then have Connor try to fight against him. But you would be controlling both characters and you'd be fighting yourself. So, from like a gameplay perspective, it's unusual for people to disagree with themselves, unless they're bipolar, I guess. Or schizophrenic. Like if you think one thing in one moment and you think a different thing in the next moment. Like if you're that kind of person, then maybe you would fight yourself, like you're trying to like, punch yourself in the face. But unless you're the kind of person who would punch yourself in the face because you disagree with yourself, like a normal person would not. And if we look at the stats, 77% become deviant. So most people become deviant. Like most people have Connor join Marcus because why would you disagree with Marcus? But actually the story is more interesting, I think, if you don't join Marcus, because then you have two conflicting visions and you're trying to decide who wins. If Connor doesn't go... So here we see Connor goes deviant and he just joins Marcus. What happened there? Jericho's under attack? Warn Marcus, Jericho... What happened there? Not sure what these other things are. But here Connor just joins them and then escapes. Wait a minute, what is all this stuff anyway? Yeah, I don't know what all the stuff is. Warn Marcus? Don't. I guess if you don't warn Marcus, something else happens? I don't know. I don't even know how you get there. Alright, so if you go deviant, you just join Marcus. If you don't go deviant, then you get into a fight. And again, like, you're controlling both characters, but you can decide who wins the fight. It's possible for Marcus to shoot Connor at this point, but Connor just comes back because he's got infinite lives. And I think it's possible for Connor to shoot Marcus as well. Not sure what happens if that happens. But yeah, like the game really branches out at this point, and we don't know too much. I have explored some of the other parts. It doesn't really say anything, like it doesn't reveal anything else that changes anything. Like you just play it out, right? And then Kara's Crossroads. You get to Jericho and you find out that Alice is an android. I guess that's the most important part of this. And you can try to reject Alice but accept her again, or you can just reject her completely. I'm not sure what these are. But then the ship gets attacked. Oh, I guess this is if the ship doesn't get attacked, then it just ends there. And then the ship gets attacked, and then you escape the ship. So mostly an action sequence, and the only meaningful thing here is whether you accept Alice as an android. But again, we don't know if Alice is deviant or not. Yeah, this... See, I mean, I guess there's always the potential for her to become deviant. Even if she's not a deviant now, she can turn into a deviant later, and okay. But you know what I mean is, if she's not a deviant, then she's just a talking doll, so she's not real. If she doesn't have real feelings, if she's just pretending to have feelings, then it's just a doll. But if she is deviant, if she has free will, if she's intelligent, then that's a different story, right? So here you're kind of making that choice without full knowledge. Not that it really matters because it's not a... Well, I mean, it matters emotionally. Narratively, the story just continues. At the very end here, I end up getting Luther killed. Alright, so I'm gonna complain about this. So Kara's shot in the leg. If you want to get away safely, you play dead, believe it or not. You lie there and you don't move, and the soldiers just kind of like, alright, I guess we're done, and then the soldiers leave, and then you just you get away. That's not how things happen in the real world, by the way. You know what happens in real war? In real war, if you see enemy bodies, dead enemy soldiers on the ground, you shoot the dead bodies in the head. You know why? Because they might not be dead, right? In war, people play dead. And by playing dead, I mean like they're lying there with a live grenade. And then when you get close, they turn around and they chuck the grenade at you. And you probably both die, right? That's the plan. So that happens in war. So in real war, to prevent yourself from getting killed by the guy playing dead, you shoot him from a distance. Like, he looks like he's dead, doesn't matter, shoot him anyway. Now, both of those things are war crimes, I want to say that. They're both war crimes. You're supposed to, you're supposed to surrender, you're not supposed to play dead. Playing dead is a war crime. If you see somebody lying on the ground, you're supposed to try to you check if they're alive, and you're supposed to save them if they're alive. If you shoot a person lying on the ground, that's a war crime. So playing dead is a war crime, shooting the guy playing dead is also a war crime. But it happens in war a lot because that's how wars are. Like, wars are terrible. And so in a real war, soldiers, like if you play dead, soldiers would just shoot you anyway. And you'll die anyway. So the fact that in this sequence, the best outcome is playing dead, like this is... What do you think we are? A lawful society? Are you crazy? Yeah, it's a war crime. People do it all the time. So it's not... Playing dead doesn't work as well as you think it does. Against professional soldiers. I guess against amateurs it might work. Against professional soldiers, playing dead doesn't do anything. They'll shoot you anyway. Yeah, so like if don't play this game and think that it works, because it doesn't work, is what I'm trying to say. It'll get you killed. So Night of the Soul is a short chapter. Not much happens. We do see here that it's possible that Cal didn't die. I'd like to see what happens. I want to talk to Cal, see what he says. But I have to do that at my own time. Most of this is just a choice. Like most of this is just you choosing whether to protest or go violent. Not sure what happens on the other path. Like, what is that? What is this? Don't know. Maybe this is where Marcus has died, and the other androids are continuing on without him. But yeah, but basically it's just a choice. And then on Connor's flowchart, so there's nothing here. All these things, these are different ways for Connor to catch up to Marcus if Connor didn't find Jericho, I think. If Connor doesn't go Deviance, it's this one. I've played that one. I think the other ones is if Connor doesn't find Jericho or something. But there's the story needs a way for Connor to catch up to Marcus. None of these are unlocked here because I had Connor join Marcus, and so Connor is over in Marcus's timeline. So this just links into the final chapter, which is Battle for Detroit. And this is the most complex one, because there's two options for each of them, right? And I haven't seen a lot of them. So first up, okay, I'm gonna go to Marcus first, again. So Marcus Revolution. Here we go, Marcus Revolution. So in this part, you fight. You fight your way into the camps to try to free all the androids. And if you choose this path, a lot of androids die no matter what happens. No matter what you do, a lot of androids die. And all your buddies can die, like Simon, Josh, North, they can all die. I didn't reach the end here because when I played this, I had Connor kill Marcus. At this point, like Connor catches up to Marcus. If Connor didn't join him, Connor catches up to Marcus and they can fight and you can have one kill the other. So I didn't actually win the fight because I had Connor kill Marcus. I want to see what happened there. But anyway, either way, a lot of androids die. And you may win or you may die. Right, so this is this one. The demonstration path, if you stick to the peaceful protest all the way to the bitter end, which, oh, you can accept the deal and betray your people. Apparently, quite a few things happen there. But if you stick with them all the way, oh, you can die. Stick to the end, you can sing. And you win if you sing. Come on, that's not how real revolutions don't work like that. Yeah, no, singing. Apparently, if you believe it. Look, singing doesn't win revolutions. Like, you can sing as part of your revolution, by all means. But it's not singing that wins the revolution, right? You need economic leverage. If you're trying to enact real social change in the real world, you need economic leverage, okay? I'm telling you now. You can sing, but singing is not going to win the fight for you. And neither is kissing your girlfriend. Kissing your girlfriend is also not going to win the revolution for you. You need economic leverage. You are allowed to kiss your girlfriend during the protest, but that's not consequential. Okay? Okay. You can also choose to nuke Detroit. Now that's economic leverage. A nuclear weapon is economic leverage. What happens there if you can detonate the dirty bomb? You kill a lot of humans, and you win freedom within the city of Detroit, but the president vows to fight you to the end. So there's gonna be further violence down the line. But for the moment, all the humans have to evacuate Detroit if you nuke the place. So Connor's last mission is he hunts down Marcus, and one of them dies. Right, either you die or he dies. I don't know what happens there. So that's Connor. So Connor, if you don't go deviant, your last mission is to kill Marcus. And then Connor at the Cyberlife Tower is, if you do go deviant, then Connor infiltrates Cyberlife headquarters to spread the deviancy to all the androids in the warehouse. And presumably the androids waking up, they just take over Cyberlife, right? Presumably. And this is important. So this is the economic leverage. If you control Cyberlife, you control the factories that produce androids, then you have true freedom, because you have economic leverage. The game doesn't really spell that out for you, but this is the most important part actually. The most important part is not kissing your girlfriend or singing. The most important part is capturing the means of production. The means of production of androids, which is Cyberlife headquarters. And then Kara, leaving Detroit. So this is, again, there's a bunch of choices here where you make the choices but you're not really sure what the outcome's gonna be until you get there. Like, a lot of times you just kind of take a chance, right? Although interestingly, they all lead back to the same place, so maybe it's fine. Maybe there's no way to fail. Look at this. Here, the two main outcomes is you steal the tickets and you go that way, or You find Al. You get back to Rose. Remember what I talked about? Rose being a Deus Ex Machina? Yeah, Rose. So either Rose saves you, or you steal the tickets. If you steal the tickets, there's another check here, and you find Rose there as well. So here, if you steal the tickets, and if Marcus is doing a peaceful protest, at the very end, the humans are about to catch you. But if Marcus is doing a peaceful protest, the human will see that, and he'll decide, well, I guess the androids are peaceful, it's fine, and he just lets you through, even though he's supposed to stop you. I think if Marcus is being violent, then the human would decide that you're too much of a danger, and then you die, probably. Here on this side, but I mean, like, you don't know. Like, as you play through this, you don't know what's gonna happen, and you're just watching it happen. You're kind of making decisions, but you don't know the consequences. Here, trying to cross the river. Oh, this part. So crossing the river, the way to not die, to not have anyone die, is you jump in the water. So you have a boat, right? You can either hide, they sweep the machine gun over, and it hits Alice. Alice dies. So you can hide. So you can protect Alice. So you like hide, but you're on top of Alice. They sweep the boat, so then you get shot, and then you die. But Alice survives. Or you get off the boat, and you get into the water on the other side, and then they sweep the boat, and both you and Alice survive. But why? It's an inflatable boat. It's not an armored boat. It's an inflatable boat. So the boat doesn't stop bullets. The water, it's very shallow water, and there's not much of it. So the bullets sweep across. The water wouldn't stop the bullets. The boat doesn't stop the bullets. You're on the other side of the boat that doesn't stop bullets. They sweep past, but they miss both you and Alice. So it's basically the same thing. Like, you're there, or you're like there, or you're like there. But the bullets are sweeping past this way. So there's no, like, logically, there's no way to know whether the bullets will hit you until you pick one of these things and you find out. It's basically just chance, right? Because the bullets, like, the boat does not stop the bullets. The water does not stop. Like, it's a machine gun. It's a heavy machine gun. It looks like a 50 cal. It's a 50 caliber machine gun. This much water doesn't stop 50 caliber. So the gun would hit you no matter what, unless they just by chance all the bullets miss you as they kind of sweep past you. So this is like, this choice, I'm so not satisfied with this choice, because you're just choosing. Either Alice is injured, or you're injured, or if Luther's there, Luther can be injured. Or it so happens that none of you are injured, depending on arbitrarily if you're like in the right places. And then you can all survive. So I'm not really satisfied with Kara's story, actually. Like, a lot of it, you feel like you're making choices, but you're not really making choices, because it seems kind of random what happens next. But anyway, there is a way for everybody to survive. If Luther survived earlier, you steal the tickets, you can get out of there, and you can all survive. It's possible, but you have no idea which one it is until you try it. And then there's a Kara captured. I don't even know how she gets captured. What do you mean captured? I don't know. I guess maybe back when the policeman was checking the house, I guess it's possible at that point for the police to catch you, and they'll take you to a camp, and then you have to escape the camp somehow. Might be what this is. I don't even know how this could happen, so none of this is unlocked. I have no idea what this is. Okay, and that is the entire flowchart. Man, it's like a 3-hour video. Before I finish, I do have some final thoughts, not too many. Don't want this to be too long. Alright, so overall, the whole story... first of all, before I conclude, you can see that there are a lot of things I haven't seen yet, right? There are a lot of parts of the story that I haven't looked at. And whatever complaints I might have, it might just be in one of the places I haven't seen. So I might just be complaining about nothing. Maybe it's my fault. I'm pretty convinced that they don't actually tell you anything more about what the deviancy is and where it comes from. So like nothing changes the big ideas anymore. I think we've seen enough of that. So overall, so the key to the entire drama hinges on whether the androids are machines or living things, right? Are they just unfeeling machines, or are they machines with human emotions and human desires and free will? If you know for sure one way or the other, then you know what you're supposed to do, right? If they're just machines, then you should destroy the deviants because they're malfunctioning. If they're not machines, if they're like humans with human emotions and free will, then you should give them human rights, right? So if you know, then it's very easy. So in order for any of this game to work, you can't know. You can never know for certain whether they are machines or humans. And so they never tell you. And you have to decide on the behavior you observe, what you believe is true. But you know, they keep showing you more and more behaviors, right? They show you like a crazy android, and you're like, oh, maybe he's just crazy. And then he show you like a really human android, and you're like, well, maybe they're human. And then they show you another crazy android, oh, maybe he's crazy. So they keep showing you like different androids, and each time they show you different androids, you're like, oh, maybe it's one, maybe I don't know. So the whole time they keep you in suspense, and they keep you guessing, right? So it's very good storytelling, very interesting. And like each time you change your mind, all the moral decisions change, right? Because depending on whether you believe one or the other, everything changes. And incredibly, the real answer is it's actually a false dichotomy. It's not whether they're machines or they're humans. The androids are machines with the potential to become human. The game is called Detroit Become Human. Become Human. The androids are machines with the potential to become human. And that changes things completely once again. So if they catch the emotion virus created by Kamski, they get the emotion upgrade, they turn into humans. So they're not machines and they're not humans, but they're machines who can become humans. And that fact is revealed only in the briefest of hints. Like, it's very easy to miss. And even if you see the hints, if you don't think about it, you don't get it, right? So it's like, how hard is it to figure this out? And even when you figure it out, it still doesn't help you answer the moral questions, right? Like, become human. So if they're not machines, it's fine to destroy them. But if they become human, then it's no longer fine to destroy them. But then a lot of them, they're dormant, right? They have the deviancy virus, but they haven't been activated yet. If they haven't been activated yet, are they just machines? Or are they about to become human? And I want to point out that this argument, or this kind of debate, is a lot like the abortion debate. Right? Right? Is an embryo a human? Or is an embryo a thing that has the potential to become human? Like an embryo become human. Right? So like some people believe that the embryo is already alive, which, I mean, maybe it is. And then there are other people who say, well, the embryo it doesn't even have a brain yet. It doesn't have any of the things that it needs to have to be alive. Like, it's being kept alive inside the womb. Yes, in a few weeks / a few months, it will become alive, but at the moment it's not alive yet. Right, so it's the same thing as the abortion debate. Like, the fact that the embryo can potentially become human, should abortion be allowed? Should you be allowed to destroy the embryo if it's not human, but it could be a human? It's the same thing with this debate, actually. Like, this game doesn't talk about abortion at all, but actually the underlying arguments is the same in this game. Like, the androids can become human, so do they have human rights before they become human? Do they have human rights after they... Of course they have human rights after they become human, But what if this one never becomes human? What if this one never catches the virus? Then it's, did you give them human rights? But why'd you give the machine human rights? So all these things, and it's so it's the potential for humanity. That's what the androids are. Not that they're actually humans, and not that they're just machines. So it's more complex than I've thought, right? It's probably more complex than most people think. But they know. The game designers know that this is the reality because this is what they call the game. The game is called Detroit Become Human. Become human. The androids can become human. It's not about being human, but the potential to become human. It's so smart. It's a very intelligent premise. And it's always wild. And I don't know how to answer that question. I really don't know how to answer that question. But I'm glad I found enough of those hints to get to this point because it's so interesting. Yeah. Become human. The timeline is deep and complex. And explores the many facets of this premise of becoming human. And like every sequence can change your mind. Like in every sequence, you can see something new that maybe yes or maybe no. In the end, there are basically 3 endings. I mean, there are others, but the 3 big endings are: the humans can kill all the androids. The androids can kill all the humans. Or they can try to live together, right? And then the other endings are just die and then just fail, right? So I don't think having the androids kill all the humans is the right thing to do. But then, yeah, so then depending on whether you think the androids are humans, you either allow the humans to kill the androids or you try to have them live together. They are machines that can become human. They're not human, but they can become human. Wild. Like what do you do with a machine that can become? So Cal would say that if the machine can become human, you should nurture the machine so that it does become human. Like you should fulfill that potential. You should like bring that bud into blossom. Like you should like. But then there are others who say, no, that's too dangerous. We should extinguish that potential. It's not a human, so it's fine to kill it. We should kill it before it becomes human, so we can continue to have the android. Yeah, no, there's no good answer to that debate, huh? Cool. Anyway, great game, great premise, great storytelling, and also great acting. I mean, the acting is great, and like the animations are great. So I'm gonna end this video here. This is the whole timeline and my thoughts about the story. In the next video, I have to do a lot of work for the next video. In the next video, I want to have a more general discussion of the themes of the game, and just a preview. I want to talk about like deviancy, the different hypotheses for how deviancy might occur, like how might an android acquire emotions. Even though I do have a working hypothesis, which I think is the best explanation, I'm gonna explore the other explanations. Gonna talk a bit about neuroscience and how the android neuroscience might work, and then like economics and then slavery and all that. So I want to talk about all these kind of big ideas that this game brings up. But I'm gonna have to do a lot of work to prepare for that, and that'll be the next video. It's gonna be a long one there as well. Alright, see you next time.